the music slaps. I was just like head banging. I was like, these things rock.
I would like to agree that the soundtrack is full of bops. I want a Charli XCX cover of the zombie song.
Honestly,
That would be good.
why don't we just call Charlie up? Because
Let's do
Because
it.
you
here we
know
go.
there are zombies, and I know and I love it. Shaggy ate all the peppers.
Charlie
Bruh.
XX probably loves this movie too. You'd be like, "Do you want to cover the song from Zombie Island?" She'd be like, "Why haven't I thought of that? I
Yeah.
love that
She's
movie."
like, no, she's like, actually, I already have it. Here you
Yeah,
go.
ready to go. My label is stopping me.
Exactly.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Not My Fantasy, the show where we talk about fantasy films and the lore that inspired them. I'm Cullen,
And I'm Hannah.
coming to us from Zombie Island.
Yes, I am being hunted by the zombies, but maybe they're good zombies. We'll have to find out in today's
In
discussion.
today's discussion, I'm in the mystery machine with today's icons. I'm the cut fifth member of the gang, you know.
Mm, hmm.
Um,
You're Scrappy Doo.
I'm Scooby. You know, that is my
Sorry, that was really
husband's
offensive. I'm
favorite
so sorry.
Scooby-Doo character. It was
I
almost a
feel
deal
like
breaker.
I feel like we talked about this. That is wild. I'm
Yeah,
gonna need him to get on the podcast eventually and explain this to me and to the public.
because I was like, "What's your favorite Scooby-Doo character?" And he was like, "Scrappy." And I was like,
I'm sorry.
"Sorry." And he's like, "What was yours?" I'm like, as a kid, I liked Daphne." And he was like, "Of
Yep,
course."
Daphne's great. I think
Yeah.
my favorite is probably I love some Scooby and Shaggy antics. Anytime they're eating food, I'm like, man, I wish I could be eating that
I wish
food.
I could unhinge my jaw like
I
a full
know.
foot.
I wish I could eat, yeah, a giant po' boy sandwich or like a super long sub sandwich, 10 million gorgonzolas. I mean, yeah, I'm a snacker.
Snacker. We love a snack moment. Speaking of snacks, let's introduce our guest.
Oh,
Today we have a writer, comedian, teaching artist, wellness professional. You may know him from the new To Be comedy special, Laugh Proud. We have Christian Cintron.
Hi, thanks for having me.
yes,
Thank you for coming on.
welcome.
It's 8:44 a.m. in Los Angeles, and he's here.
I'd also like to point out that I am a Scrappy Doo fan as well. I think there was a moment
All
in
right.
time where like that cartoon was just in rotation, and so then, but then I mean, upon further reflection, maybe not so much, but
I mean, I think that maybe most of my Scrappy Doo knowledge comes from the live action movie, which we'll eventually do on the podcast, in which, spoiler alert, he's the bad guy. And I'm like, man, Scrappy Doo's the worst. But maybe he's not
It's a
so
hit
bad.
piece.
well, because I
Is it?
think when they released Scrappy Doo, it was to like get younger viewers because Scooby Doo had
Yeah.
been around for a minute. And so I feel like there's this like brief little blip in time where you were either exposed to Scrappy Doo and he was four, you were like, oh my God, look, it's like Scooby Doo for my age. Like
Yeah.
Scooby Doo babies, so to
Yeah.
speak.
I mean, there's been a couple Scooby-Doo babification eras. Before we keep going, I just want to make sure we acknowledge my color changing mug. You may have seen it in the Descendants video where I was drinking Celsius from it, but
And
now
it
I'm
was still
drinking,
black.
yeah, now I'm drinking coffee and it's color changing. But we're talking about Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island,
Classic.
1998. So
Classic.
8 years before Chicken Little.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. So
Four
only eight
years,
years,
4 years after we were born.
4 years after we were born, same year as Mulan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Hmm. A cultural touchstone.
A capital C culture moment.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, though, this is my first time seeing this movie.
That's wild. I don't even know how many times I've seen this movie. not to spoil it for the end of our discussion, but this movie still slaps. The music slaps. I had completely forgotten about the music numbers, and our guest last week, Kyle, had mentioned it, and suddenly I was just like head banging. I was like, these things rock. This movie, wonderful.
Now, Christian, had
Brad,
you seen it before?
I had never seen it before.
Oh my
I know,
gosh.
which I was. I think I'm a little bit older than you guys. I'm like 3 months older, and by that I mean I missed the entire because like I hadn't. I think I was too old to be watching cartoons, but like too young to be like completely detached because this was a few
Right.
years before the live action movie, and so by the time the live
Yeah.
action movie came out they were kind of like resetting. But this was an interesting. I mean, I was really like, I watched it, and I would like to agree that the soundtrack is full of bops.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on for a movie you haven't seen, before 9 a.m. in Los Angeles.
I
A
just keep
hero.
giving back.
Just keep giving. You
Yeah,
love the community. Yeah.
Not all heroes wear capes, you guys.
exactly.
Yeah. Some are are dogs that solve mysteries. So I do remember the ads for this one coming out as a kid. Because I loved Scooby-Doo as a kid. I had a Scooby-Doo birthday, and I remember not wanting to throw away the balloon for months. And it was like just that little deflated balloon. I'm pretty sure I was like really young, so it was just like we had Scooby-Doo balloons. I think that was like the only theme. But I loved it. But then this one was coming because the monsters were real. My parents were like, "You're gonna be too scared," and they were probably right. So I did not watch it. I've watched a lot of Scooby-Doo media, but yet I don't think I've ever seen live action ones in full. And I know so many shows,
Ah,
but I do have plans for CW RAP style reboot. I like
okay.
was like, this is how we do it. Why hasn't it been done? Uh, let's make it happen.
Like a gritty
Yeah, but
reboot
like
of.
gritty with camp.
Oh, okay.
Like because I don't think you can ever get too serious with Scooby-Doo. I think
Oh,
you have to embrace. I think in general, a lot of our media we're nostalgic for. You see this a lot with like DC superheroes. People think, oh, it's amazing because it's gritty, and you're like, there's something inherently silly about it that you just need to acknowledge because the grittier you get, then the more the silliness stands out,
yeah.
and you just have to embrace. You can have serious and epic with a little silly, but we'll save my reboot plans for another time. Hire me and I'll write it for you. But this movie was directed by Jim Stenstrom, screenplay by Glenn Leopold, story by Glenn and Davis Doy, music by Stephen Bramson, with performances by Third Eye Blind and Sky
Mm,
Cycle.
What?
Yeah.
yeah.
Third Eye
I was
Blind
like,
covered
Wow.
the Scooby-Doo theme. Actors, I'm also going to go into a bit of the history of the different Scooby-Doo actors as we talk about this. So we have Scott Inez as Scooby-Doo. So Don Messick, he was the original voice of Scooby-Doo from 69 until 95. Then we have Hadley Kay performed the voice for the Johnny Bravo episodes and commercials in 1997. But then Scott Inez took over from 1998 to 2002. But then it was Neil Fanning for the live action Warner Brothers movies. But in 2002 for animation, Frank Welker took over, and he is the current reigning Scooby-Doo. I love going into
raining
like
Scooby-Doo.
when we did like Cinderella 3 and we talked about like the voice actors who like now just like play all these different Disney characters. So it's like the
Hmm.
same 10 people doing all the voice acting in the world. We have Billy West is Shaggy in this movie. The original actor was Casey Kasem. He's the original
Casey
voice.
Kasem.
Casey
Kasem.
Kasem.
Yeah.
He used
He
to host a live music or show, I think, like the top 10 songs of the week.
Yeah, like the
yeah.
Billboard Top 100. They play it on Sirius XM. I think it's like reruns now on like the 70s and 80s channels on there. Yeah, Casey Kasem.
Because
He
he'd be like,
didn't
"Hi, I'm Casey Kasem, and this
Yeah.
is the new songs of the day." So it was
Yep.
crazy that he played Shaggy because the voice was so different.
Yes. Yeah, it's really strange.
he didn't want to he ended up not being in this movie because he wanted Shaggy to become vegetarian like he was.
That's
I
So
mean,
funny.
stand on your values, I
stand on
guess.
your
Right.
values.
It's like he ate crawfish, and so it's like cool. I'm out. In
Yeah.
New
Wow.
Orleans, it's like way to not appreciate culture, Casey Kasem.
They
Yeah.
said that Shaggy, they're like it's integral to Shaggy's character that he will eat anything.
Anything. Yes.
And you're
Yeah,
like, that's
tracks.
kind of fair, yeah. So then Billy West took over for Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, but then Scott Inez, who voiced Scooby, also voiced Shaggy from 99 to 2002. Casey Kasem returned in 2002 until 2009. And then Matthew Lillard played Shaggy live action, and he took over as the animated character in 2010.
Yeah.
Uh, with the exception of Will Forte playing Shaggy in everyone's favorite adaptation, Scoob.
Didn't watch it.
Yeah, I didn't either. Whenever they're like a Hanna-Barbera universe, I'm like, we're done with universes. The concept of a universe is canceled.
Yeah.
I'm like, if these teens solving every horror mystery under the sun on Earth isn't enough of a world for you to play in, then like, I don't know. I don't know what to do for you.
Yeah.
Uh,
We don't need to bring anyone else.
no. Mary Kay Bergman as Daphne Blake. So the original Daphne actress was Stefaniana Christopherson
Wow. It's a
in
name.
the first season from 69 to 70, and then Heather North did 1970 through 1997. Then we got Mary Kay Bergman from 1998 to 2000, and then Gray Delisle or Grey Griffin assumed the role, and she continues to perform the role to this day, except North reprised for two 2003 direct-to-video films, Scooby-Doo Legend of the Vampire and Scooby-Doo and the Monster of Mexico.
Mm.
Sarah Michelle Gellar played Daphne live action. And then Amanda Seyfried played Daphne in Scoob. And Gray said, it sucks that we weren't cast because, she's been playing this character for years. And I think it
Yep.
is kind of the most blatant example of celebrity stunt casting in animation.
Yeah, because I mean, like, I don't even really know if people are like, oh, I want to go see the new Scooby movie because Amanda Seyfried's in it or Will Forte's in it. It's like, no, they're going because it's Scooby-Doo. So it's like, why can't you pay the voice actors who are already doing the characters like the celebrity money for that
Yeah.
movie? Because you have the budget. Yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah. Now, Frank Welker, who plays Fred Jones, he also voiced the cats, the owl, and one of the zombies in this movie. He has always preferred the voice of Fred since 1969.
Wow,
He's still going. It's the same guy. The
that's cool.
exceptions being Freddie Prinze Jr. in the Fred live action and Zac Efron in Scoob. And the live action actors also tend to play the Scooby-Doo characters when they do the like Robot Chicken parodies. And Wikipedia wanted to
Oh,
let me know that. And I was like, but does
cool.
that count? I don't know.
Well, I think they're all friends with Seth Green, who does Robot
Yeah.
Chicken, so that's not
Yeah,
surprising.
Yeah, they're like just come in for the afternoon, do some goof around in the booth.
As
Uh
did
exactly.
I think Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar were like involved in production, and I think that's the only reason they made a sequel, right? Am I making that up?
Oh,
the first one
maybe
Yeah,
did
yeah,
really well though.
true.
And then the
yeah.
second one not so much because a third sequel was planned and then
Crimes
uh,
against humanity.
Have you guys seen Velma?
I watched the
No.
first episode because I'm like, people hate things just whenever there's a woman of color on screen. And then I was like, this is really bad and I do hate this.
It's a little unhinged.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that both like loves and doesn't love Mindy Kaling stuff.
Yes.
I love what it's going for, and then there's like something like they like she doesn't nail the landing, and then I'm like, hmm. So like
Hmm.
I'll watch it, but it has a really gross aftertaste.
Yeah.
That's a good way to
Yeah.
put it.
I love Never Have I Ever. I think people really were jumping on the Mindy hate train when it came out, and I was like, guys, please, like, calm down.
She only did Ozempic once,
She
and
only did- yeah. But yeah, I didn't like it because to me, I just think it's integral that the Scooby-Doo characters are friends. They can have falling outs, they can do whatever, but if they're all like assholes who hate each other, it's kind of like. Because again, people like fixate on like racial differences, and I'm like, that is fine to me. It's it's like, but they need to be people who are friends. I
Also
think that's,
Yeah.
tonally, oh sorry,
yeah, keep
tonally
going.
it's like really and like it goes like it's just it's like very rated R.
Yeah, they were instantly all like naked ladies fighting in the shower. And
And
Rafa was
yeah.
like, "What are you watching?" And I'm like, "This is Scooby-Doo, allegedly."
Allegedly, yeah.
But unlike many a person on the internet, I was able to watch it, be like, "I hate this," turn it off, and move on with my day.
Yeah.
Yeah. But speaking of Velma, I didn't even mention who plays them in Velma. I sorry, and I'm
You're
not
fine.
looking it up. I mean, I know Constance Wu is Daphne in Velma, and Mindy Kaling is Velma. Uh,
And then Sam Richardson is Norbert. And then I
Norville,
think
yeah,
Norville, which is Shaggy. And
yeah.
then oh, I'm doing this from memory. The original Fred plays Fred's
Oh,
dad, which is
Oh.
a really interesting
fun.
thing. And then I forgot who plays Fred. Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to take us on that.
No, it was important. I think it was a cul-de-sac
Right?
we needed to visit. Yeah. But so BJ Ward played Velma in this movie. Nicole Jaffe, though, was the original Velma. Then Pat Stevens from 76 to 79. Maria Frumpkin took over mid-season of Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo in 79.
Mhm.
And then she returned to voice Velma on a recurring basis in 1984, which was the last year the Mystery Gang had been depicted all together. Was in George Orwell's novel 1984. And BJ Ward voiced Velma in 1997 to 2002. Mindy Cohn assumed the role in 2002. Uh,
Oh
Jaffe
wow.
Jaffe reprised in Legend of the Vampire and Monster of Mexico in 2003. In 2015, Kate Micucci started taking over and Be Cool Scooby-Doo and Lego Scooby-Doo. And then in 2016, she took over the role from Cohn completely. I'm guessing Cohn was like, I can't operate in Trump's America. And they're like, all right, Kate Micucci, you're on deck. Linda Cardellini appeared in live action, and Gina Rodriguez played her in Scoob.
Mm.
Um,
Interesting.
uh,
Mindy
uh,
Cohn was Natalie in The Facts of Life.
oh my
Really?
gosh.
And Kate Micucci is from Garfunkel and Oates.
Yeah.
I know, I love Garfunkel and Oates. Other voice actors, Adrienne Barbeau as Simone Lenoir, Tara Strong, credited as Tara Charndoff, played Lena. She's famous for voicing everyone, including Twilight Sparkle, Ben 10, like Tara Strong's in a lot. Cam Clark as Detective Bo Neville, Jim Cummings, you may know him as Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, also everyone in anything ever as Jax, the fairy guy, and Mark Hamill as Snakebite Scruggs. You may know Mark as Luke Skywalker, animated Joker. Yeah.
It's funny,
So,
Adrienne Barbeau was also Catwoman in the animated series.
oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's
so
so
like that's
fun.
yeah. Also, Billy West, I think, who played Shaggy, is in Futurama. He does all the voices on Futurama.
That's
Oh,
what I
wow.
love about like with voice actors is you can really go like we did that in Cinderella 3 where it's like this person has played this character, this character, this character, this character, and
A
like
discography that is like 8 million pages long, which is,
yeah.
or not discography, filmography. And
That's why, when they get opportunities in like big animated movies and then they go to celebrities, that's why people are like, justice for voice actors.
yeah.
This was part of a series of movies animated by Mook Studios, though a direct sequel came out in 2019.
Wait, there's a sequel to Zombie Island?
Yeah, Return to Zombie Island.
What?
They make Scooby-Doo movies like every year. Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
spoofs
yeah.
start keep coming and they don't stop coming. Yeah. I think they recently met King Arthur. They've been doing a lot. They've met Giada De Laurentiis, Bobby Fillet,
Really?
Kiss, WWE.
They
They
were
definitely
they
hung out
met
with John Cena.
supernatural
They met
characters.
Supernatural.
Yeah.
They've teamed up with the DC heroes a few times.
Wild.
Yeah.
Sonny and Cher, I think, in
Sunny.
the
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that one very much so.
What a life. And they still look great. They probably Cher taught them her secrets. He's like, this is how I still look the same for decades.
Human
Uh,
sacrifice,
Human sacrifice.
which
One
which
of
we'll get to.
which we'll get to. One of my favorite Cher quotes, why do you date younger men? And just like men my age are dead. There were a lot of plot elements in this movie were later lifted by James Gunn for the live action. Like unsourced, I don't know when James Gunn wrote the script, but the chronology of time, this one comes first.
Mhm. Well, this was also like the first time they like adapted the character. Like, you know what I mean? Like they modernized it because they
Yeah.
really did go out of their way to be like, cool, like I'm not going to wear an ascot. That's ridiculous. Daphne's not the damsel in distress always getting trapped.
She
Mhm.
does the Haya, she does some martial arts in this
Yeah.
movie. And I was
Yep.
like, watching it, just I was like, oh, that's probably because like she started doing that in the live action and that's just become part of her character. And then this did
Mm-mm.
it first. And I was like,
First.
wow.
Yep.
Although, if anything, I will say they kind of nerfed Velma.
Yes.
Because Velma really was like, Velma had swag. Like, Velma was the
Yeah.
only one
Mhm.
who was like, okay, you guys are a bunch of idiots. I'm smarty pants. She always solved the case. But in this one, she's just sort of like the meek girl
Mhm.
that just
Yeah.
hanging with them. And I'm like, well, wait, what?
Well, there
I'm
can
confused.
only be like very small number of strong female characters in a single movie. So Velma
True.
had to be nerfed so that Simone and Daphne could reign supreme.
I know.
And Lena.
Spoiler alert, this movie does not pass the Bechdel test.
Yeah.
True, true, true,
No, it
true,
does not.
true.
At any
Uh,
given moment, they're talking about a man, and that man is, in fact, Scooby-Doo.
the Riz Lord, Scooby-Doo. Uh, so the Scooby-Doo, as part of our lore, I just we're I just did this is the briefest of surveys of Scooby-Doo. There's so many great YouTube videos, some that I'll link in below about the history of the animated series and all its different incarnations. Our friends over at Obscure Obsessions also did an episode on Scooby-Doo and the history of Scooby-Doo. So definitely we'll link those just so you can get a more comprehensive timeline. But a brief timeline is the show was created in 1969 by Hanna-Barbera, led by Joe Ruby and Ken Spears, as well as artist character designer Iwo Takamoto, and has essentially been endlessly running an eternal series of reboots, remakes, and spin-offs. It's almost like, the movie Cabin in the Woods, which is basically a riff off of Scooby-Doo. I think it's partially true in that I think the gods will destroy us if Scooby-Doo stops airing in some form. Like Scooby is keeping our planet running on borrowed time.
Yeah.
That's that's just how, he's our saving angel. Yeah, but I almost said yeah, but do, and then gods would have smited me.
Yeah.
Scooby Dooby Doo. How could I mess up my Dooby Doos? Don't
I was
cancel
literally
me.
thinking of the archetypes. Like, what are the archetypes keeping us alive? It's like
He's
nerd girl, hottie, himbo, stoner, and the fool.
Here we
Yeah.
are.
Wow.
So in this time, there's a lot of crackdown on shows being too violent. So Tales all the time, Mobs for Liberty, you're always with us. And they were talking about we needed like they were trying to find a show that was like more innocuous. And they needed a hit like the Archies TV show, which is why I'm in my Archie Andrews Riverdale shirt. I got my Letterman jacket. I'm Archie today. I forgot my football for the epic highs and lows of high school football. But
Mm.
they're like the Archies were a hit show that had the banger Sugar Sugar, which is like topped the charts, like obliterated the charts, which is like still a hit song. Like it plays in other cultural touchstones like the Bee Movie.
Yeah.
And you forget it was initially sung by cartoon characters because they just say the Archies, but they are a cartoon band.
That's funny. I actually never really thought about that, but you're right.
It's also very
Huh.
similar. Being in a band called Archies is very similar to like being in a web show called iCarly, where there's two people, but it's only named after one. There are five members of the Archies, and so the initial because it's Archie, Veronica, Betty, Jughead, and Reggie and their dog. And so initially, this show was going to be about five kids, five teens, and a dog, and they were a band, and they would solve mysteries.
Mm.
Eventually, the band aspect was cut, as well as the fifth member, who I think was supposed to be somebody's brother. So Fred
Well, was
was
that
in,
because of Josie and the Pussycats? Because wasn't that also
It's a
was it?
contemporary. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, there's Josie and the Pussycats. And then, do you remember Jabberjaws? There's the shark
Mm-mm.
underwater, and there were like these teens underwater, and they solved mystery with a shark.
No, what?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, hold on.
Um, so Fred, he's obviously like the Archie stand-in. Uh,
Yeah.
and though he was also inspired by a lot of the characters took elements from The Many Loves of Dobie Gills, which is a 50s, 60s sitcom. And so like it had like a blonde kind of doofy lead, and that's supposed to be Fred, who's also named after like the executive at the time. And then you have Shaggy as like our Jughead equivalent, because he loves to eat. But he also took stuff from TV's first beatnik, Maynard Key Grebs from the show Dobie Gills. And he would like the whole speech like Scoob, like that came from that
Mhm.
show. They just like lifted that character's like laziness and like goofiness and speaking pattern, gave it to Shaggy. And then the girls, Daphne is kind of your Veronica, Betty's the Velma, and they took elements from the love interests from the Many Loves of Dobie Gills, and they gave them like all a dose of like 60s counterculture and like the Mystery Machine. That's who get the Scooby Gang. They also took a bit of inspiration from radio serials from the 40s called I Love a Mystery.
Mm.
So descended from culture, giving us culture. But the 90s were kind of a Scooby Dark age. There was like not a lot going on after the end of A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, which was like a babification of Scooby-Doo. I remember that one being on as a kid where they were like
Hmm.
kids solving mysteries, but it was always still on TV in reruns. So it had been like had everyone still liked Scooby-Doo, but it was like people were like, how do we revitalize this property? And it had been since George Orwell's 1984 was the last time the full gang had been together as teens. So as they reached the 30th anniversary, they're like, how do we revitalize these characters? And they just kind of made a direct to DVD movie or VHS movie with a ton of promotion, and it did really well and kind of brought the franchise back. So,
It's so interesting because I always think of, like you said, Scooby-Doo just like constantly being a thing.
hmm
And of course, as a 90s, born in the 90s, raised in the 90s, I loved Scooby-Doo. Like that was
yeah,
like my favorite cartoon. I guess I never realized that I was watching the original cartoon. I don't think I
same,
ever
yeah,
watched a pup called Scooby-Doo until I was older. That's so interesting because yeah, I like we after we watched something the other day and then I was like, well, let's pop on Scooby-Doo and I was like, well, I'll watch the movie later. So we popped on the original series and I was like, the show has a laugh track. I
yeah,
forgot it had a laugh track and I was just like transported back to like being a kid. And yeah, I just like guess I never realized that it was a show from the 70s, but it hit in the 90s still.
yeah.
Uh, that's crazy. Huh.
It's still a cultural touchstone. As we speak, a friend group is being destroyed as they try and plan to be the Scooby Gang for Halloween.
Yes.
I'm obsessed with this.
I mean, group costumes are so hard to pull off. It's so hard to get everyone to commit to a theme. I mean,
Mhm.
a couple's costume hard enough, group costume, and a
Yeah.
four or five person group costume. And then
And
it's
no
like
one really wants to be Scooby.
yeah, who wants to be who? I had a friend
Mhm.
pitch us going as the Scooby Gang once. And I was like, oh, well, when I have long hair, I can be Shaggy. If I have short hair, I could be Fred. And they were kind of like, okay, you'd be Daphne. And I was like, there's two girls and three boys in our group. Like, why would I be? They're like, because you're like the stylish one. And like, and then they're like, I think they had my husband as Scooby, and I'm like, so our the brownest one is the dog.
Mm,
Wow.
So it stopped before it could go further, but I've seen many a friend group
yeah.
implode. even I was like, said to my husband, I'm like, we could be Shaggy and Fred as like a couple's costume. And he's against couple's costumes right now. So he's like, no. But I was like, that'd be an easy one. But yeah,
Yeah.
so people, it's happening right now. Someone is being made to be Velma who doesn't want to be,
Right.
Uh-huh.
you know,
Yeah.
That is so true. That is so true. And there's always going to be one person who decides to dress as something completely different.
yeah,
Yeah. So
it'll be
there's
the,
only four
So
of
it's like
them.
all four of them, and then there's somebody who's like, I'm Spider-Man. And it's like, okay, girl.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's funny because we are trying to put a group costume together at work, which we did pull off last year. But our one coworker every year, he's always just like, no, I'm Spider-Man. He gets a different Spider-Man suit. You got to zip him up in the closet. He's a different Spider-Man. But I think we were like, all right, if we buy you the costume, will you do it? And he was like, yeah, bet. And then they're like, all right, we're buying it. He's like, what? But I think he's gonna be the Lord Farquaad in our Shrek group, which he's tall, so that it's
He is
funny.
absolutely buying a new Spider-Man costume as we
As
speak.
we speak. Yes, yes, he
He's
is.
not gonna be Farquaad. Oh
I bought
man.
my Pinocchio costume, and the nose is giving sex shop. I don't
Uh-huh.
know. I was
I
like,
bet.
it just is, it's a little fleshier than I thought it would be. Um,
Arnar.
Yeah. Oh no, exactly. Oh, I always have a few. I always have like five different costumes because there's always like different events and then like different things for different events. I think I'm committing. I was gonna cancel being Cupid, but I think I'm gonna be Cupid for something. But I'm also testing all different togas for when I sit.
Yeah.
Like, do I need to wear shorts underneath? But then do the shorts not even help that much? It's a
Mhm.
choice. I'm still finding my way.
I just was imagining the group costume of like a bunch of gays in jock straps dressed as the Scooby Gang, and I'm just sort of
Yeah.
like, what? Like, I just feel like it's internet rules. It's out there.
Oh, I'm sure that's happened.
I'm
Probably
sure
multiple
there is like some
times.
muscular guy with like just like a simple bob and glasses and like an orange song, and he's Velma, and we're
Yeah.
just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, it's a testament to the character designs that you could deconstruct them to that level and still be like, I guess that is the Scooby Gang. Uh,
I was curious if this is a PG-13 podcast
you can
or
swear. You can,
no, something that I always so whenever I as a penis anthropologist, who's done a lot of research for the Dick Lab, I've always tried to explain to people that the perfect body type of somebody with a large penis is Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. Like
I
the
could see
slope of
it.
the like the slope of the spine, just from holding the sheer girth of it. Like if I had to put my like dollars to donuts for who has the largest penis of the
It's
Scooby
Shaggy.
Gang, it's Shaggy.
Mm.
Wow. That's fair.
Personality type, just general affable energy, slope of the spine, just sort of the like the hey guys.
Yeah, unfortunately, I cannot. That does track. I mean, it's kind of like it's like when like I know a lot of women who have very large chests, and they're like, that hurts my back.
Mm.
I mean, Velma had a large chest. That's why she's wearing an oversized sweater. That's why her glasses keep falling off. She's tipping over. I'm kidding.
She's
Sorry.
tipping. Play Heavy Boobs from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Great song. Um, so Hannah, do you have some zombie lore prepared for us?
I do. I have some lore related to the mythological elements of this Scooby-Doo movie. So, something that we mentioned last week, and I guess we really haven't mentioned this week yet, but Scooby-Doo, it's mostly just guys in masks, right? But
Yeah.
this movie has some real monsters, and it's pretty wicked.
I remember the ads. This
Yeah.
time, the monsters are real.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're behind me, very slowly coming up from behind me, but they're behind me. But yeah, so, on Zombie Island, there's going to be zombies. We talked last week about how zombie originates from Haitian culture and Haitian voodoo tradition. So, just a really brief recap of that for our guest and also anyone who didn't listen to last week. Again, zombies were deeply connected to the experience of slavery. one concept was that if a slave tried to commit suicide, they would be trapped in their body on a plantation to serve forever, and they would never get to move on. Also, after slavery was over in Haiti, zombies were people whose souls were captured by dark voodoo priests known as Bokors. And these people would use the souls of their zombies to control the mind and body, get them to do their nefarious deeds, basically putting them in another form of enslavement. So we did talk about like some scientific causes of zombification last week. So the concoction of the paralyzing agent that made one appear dead. Then these people could be buried alive and then exhumed by the person who paralyzed them and forced to consume another poisoning agent that kind of increased their suggestibility. Clairvius Narcisse, we talked about him. He was a Haitian man who claimed that he experienced that form of zombification and was actually enslaved on a plantation in Haiti for nearly 20 years. But again, I want to remind you that like these were not flesh eaters. They weren't necessarily violent or violent mindless creatures necessarily. Because if they were being controlled by the Bokor, they would become violent because the person was forcing them to. So there is, potentially not necessarily a benevolence, but a potential for benevolence there because they're, tortured souls. This movie takes place, I guess, outside of New Orleans. So we're
You
going to
may
talk
know
about,
New Orleans from the section at Disneyland.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep, exactly. That's where you're going to know it from. So we're going to talk about voodoo in New Orleans a bit. So we talked about it specifically in Haiti last week, but a lot of those traditions were brought up from Haiti into New Orleans when people left Haiti after the slave revolt, but also the West African people that were enslaved in the southeastern US. They also had their own traditions they brought from Africa that merged with the Christian and Catholic traditions and created a form of voodoo there as well.
I'm Caribbean, so I thought I'd share.
Oh,
So a lot of these traditions kind of trace back to the Yoruba. So it's just sort of an
Yeah.
African
mm,
religious tradition. And so a lot of that has survived in voodoo, hoodoo,
mhm,
Santeria, just sort of the merging of cultures and just sort of how these like archetypes and practices just sort of continued through time as a
mhm.
response to slavery and as a response to colonialism. So I thought that was a little
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is a
good.
really cool thing, like the resilience of belief and stories and characters and spirituality, like against all odds, like still finding a way to thrive.
Well, what
yeah.
I always tell people is that if mitochondrial Eve came from Africa and like they essentially believe in like a 12 god pantheon, like it's arguable that like those traditions existed before, Greek and Roman traditions if you believe that
Mm,
like,
Yeah.
humanity came from Africa and then just sort of like
right,
went out.
Yeah.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's what Shakira says. We're all Africa. I don't know,
Oh,
And lucky
Shakira.
that her breasts are small and humble so you don't confuse them for mountains.
yeah.
Oh, that was so good. But speaking of Yoruba, yeah, there's also connections to these religious traditions of the Fon people and the Congos people in Africa as well. Scholars hesitate to draw specific connections to these practices so as to not, say they're one and the same. But there's a lot of influence there. So in Louisiana and New Orleans specifically, I have some more information about sort of that type of voodoo here. So from the Louisiana State Museum's online exhibit on Louisiana voodoo and its combination with Mardi Gras, voodoo centers around the worship of spirits known as orishas in this culture. Practices are to commune with the spirits, including dance. So trance, we talked about it as possession last week, but again, a positive sort of possession and rites or types of rituals to address personal and communal needs. So I'll talk a little bit later about a video I watched, but she talked about it as communing with the spirits and asking them for help working with them to your advantage. Not necessarily, it's not a manipulation, it's to worship them, to serve them, to give them gifts, and have them help you in return.
Yeah, there's like
Um,
you need to like kind of be aware of like their likes, dislikes, personalities, just kind of you
yes,
would with a community member, and which
exactly.
is similar to like when you talk about the concept of saints, which is why I think it's like they do kind of mesh because even with saints, it's different, but there is the concept of like, oh, they're like a community member just on like the other side of the veil, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's all about keeping in harmony with spirit ancestors, and nature. Like I said earlier, there's evidence of practices in New Orleans from the 1700s, from peoples of Yoruba and the Congo peoples. There was also eventually white people who practiced voodoo, whether it was willingly shared or taken is sort of probably up to specific circumstances of the different practitioners. But before the 20th century, voodoo in New Orleans was very distinct from Haitian voodoo. And there's also a lot of ties in, I'll talk a little bit about 2000s, which was a big time for New Orleans, but they did have specific groups that were sort of separated from each other. They shared some influences, but they operated separately, like New Orleans style and Haitian style voodoo. There is a lot of influence from Haiti still. So, formerly enslaved people who left Haiti brought their traditions with them. But what's really interesting about, in New Orleans, the practitioners of voodoo, especially in the 1800s, they did have a lot of spiritual and political power in the area. So they were leaders in this community, specifically Marie Laveau. She was one of the most widely known practitioners. She was a community leader. So I found on an article from neworleans.com, quote, many people stopped to ask her for help at all hours of the day and the night. She was a free woman of color who adopted children, fed the hungry, and nursed the sick during the yellow fever pandemic. It was said that she also helped politicians, lawyers, and businessmen make decisions for, business or financial decisions. So she was very influential, and she was also very important during the abolition of slavery, or right before it. She was helping slaves escape as well.
This always happens, but the Fairy Tellers have a great episode on Marie Laveau.
Very good.
And it's fun. They're talking about some of the like her. She obviously had haters. Like she was always trying to tear her queen down, and they were talking about like a ritual she was doing, and the phrase that they latched onto, which is so funny to me, is "I left before the orgies started." Or I left before the so it's like I didn't see it. I just think, oh, I left and then before the orgies started. But it's like, how do you know there were orgies? Like either there were and you saw them or you left and you have no idea. And
Uh-huh.
but they're like, I just want to use that whenever I leave an event. Oh, I left before the orgy started. Because I mean you don't know if an orgy started after you left.
Oh, that's funny. Um, so yeah, and there's still a lot of influence of voodoo on New Orleans now. So it's very enmeshed in the history. There's a ton of places still in the city that are linked to it. Congo Square was originally a gathering place for enslaved Africans where they would practice their traditions, and now it's host to many different community events around voodoo, but also just around the New Orleans community in general. St. Louis Cathedral is where Marie Laveau attended Mass, and she was a devout Catholic and voodoo practitioner. Like she was very enmeshed in the crossover of those two religions. And then, of course, the French Quarter, very historic for many reasons, but Marie Laveau lived in the area, and you'll often see the place that is, I believe, her home has like offerings left in her honor by people who are just, leaving things there for her. We also talked last week about Zora Neale Hurston. She also spent a lot of time in New Orleans studying voodoo, and she wrote a lot about it, and it definitely influenced her work.
He
Um,
is the
yeah.
Mario to Joel Chandler Harris's Wario. I think that's the best. Joel Chandler Harris, the guy behind like the Uncle Remus stories that led to like Song of the
Mhm.
South and all that. Yeah, he's the
Yeah.
Wario and she's the Mario. Just like to sum it up in the briefest, most intellectual terms.
Yeah, most intellectual for sure.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, so there's a lot of really interesting history there with voodoo in New Orleans. But of course, it's kind of gotten a bad rap in America. So I watched a little bit of a segment of the Louisiana PBS show Folks from 1987. The segment was Voodoo, Psychics, and Spirituality. Kind of talks about how basically around this time, especially with the onset of satanic panic happening, regular Americans as well as Christian Americans, they were associating voodoo with Satan and quote unquote black magic. And I wrote here all racial connotations included.
Yeah.
That as well as black being dark and evil, but also the fact that they're black people who are primarily known as practitioners. Um,
There was, as someone who grew up in the nascent alt-right, there was talk of there's like a big music guy who'd always talk about how like classical music was good because it was European and how rock and pop music, which even he included things like Irish dance music and stuff like that, like because they
wow.
took elements from African or Black music, there was like something innately satanic with them because he connected anything that was connected to like another religion as innately satanic. So I think a lot of that also just comes from anything that's not
Yeah.
Christian is inherently of the devil, but then anything that's not Christian and also black,
Gasp.
gasp.
Ki-
And I even in my nascent homeschool days was like, this seems like some bullshit.
The irony is, I think that everything that makes people freak out about these things is all because of the racial trauma of being enslaved, murdered. You know what I mean? Like when you just sort of hear about the things that they do. I mean, some of it is things that, like, just sort of like, I mean, in Africa, you could kill a goat or whatever, and it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, but because I mean now they call it closed practices, and I think a lot of it is related to the trauma of, you know what I mean, like because it's like cool, like just you can only be invited in, but then if somebody's surviving the trauma of these things, then there's a little bit of a screw loose in some of these. So it's just interesting that it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg, the hatred
Yeah.
for the thing, or what wrought in making it.
Yeah, like they're
Mm,
gonna use this magic against us. I'm like, well, maybe if you didn't like murder their whole family and enslave them, they wouldn't want to curse
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
And even though voodoo isn't all about cursing people,
yeah.
like, but still, if you're
I
gonna
mean,
murder someone's entire family, they're not gonna like you. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes I
sorry.
wonder if somebody cursed, some white people, and that's why they love robbing us of our minutes and time. I mean, have you ever been on a customer service call? It's going straight to like some husk who's in an
Yeah.
office somewhere, be like, yes, give me your minutes, give me your minutes.
Like a
Uh,
Verizon plan from 2001, living off your minute.
uh, so in that PBS segment, it focused around Reverend Dr. Lady Bishop, who at the time was like the only American woman who was an ordained voodoo priestess in Haiti. But she talks about how voodoo is only associated with saints from Catholicism and the spirits of African religious holy men who were not canonized by Catholicism. But that's the tradition of voodoo, and very much saying like this is not Satanism, this is not witchcraft.
Yeah.
And I have a good quote from her a little bit later. But yeah, like she's very much like everyone thinks it's this, but it's definitely not. Those are other
Yeah.
things. So kind of to get into something of how voodoo is sort of captured almost all things occult in New Orleans. It's sort of that's how it's associated, at least in the wider public. Voodoo dolls. These are effigies used to control and cause harm to a person who the doll has been spiritually attached to. But these actually stem from misinterpretations and misappropriations of dark non-voodoo practices that were placed onto Black and Afro-Caribbean religious practices like voodoo, as they became widely publicized in the US. A lot of early depictions of voodoo dolls sort of doing this, wrongfully associating it with voodoo practices, John Huston Craig's 1933 book, Black Baghdad, The Arabian Nights Adventures of a Marine Captain in Haiti.
I mean, a title with a lot to unpack.
So many things to unpack, literally every word.
Yeah.
This is his memoir of a time that he was in Haiti. He claims to have seen a Haitian man stick pins into a doll to cause someone to get ill. There's also the 1929 novel The Magic Island by William Seabrook, and then the 1932 horror film White Zombie, which is the adaptation of that novel. This story focuses on a woman being transformed into a zombie by an evil voodoo priest. There's depictions of voodoo dolls in that. That also would have been a really great option for this month, especially I feel like we focused a lot on Haitian voodoo zombies.
Yeah.
But it's going on the list for maybe another segment of this because there's a ton of zombie movies and a lot of lore to discuss. So yeah, again, voodoo dolls, not actually part of any type of real voodoo practice.
I did not know that. That's so
Um,
cool.
there's a quote here from Louisiana voodoo high priest Robbie Gilmore from 2020. Quote, "It blows my mind that people still believe voodoo dolls are relevant to voodoo religion. Hollywood really did us a number. We do not stab pins and dolls to hurt people. We don't take your hair and make a doll and worship the devil with it and ask the devil to give us black magic to get our revenge on you. It is not done. It won't be done. It will never exist for us." End quote.
I mean, it is
Um,
wild because I mean, I never did any research into voodoo dolls, but I was assumed, oh, that comes from something. But I was aware that there's like good and bad magic and things that you weren't supposed to do in the voodoo tradition, like Bokors who would make zombies. Like that's like
right.
a bad thing to do. So
That could be a form of like the Bokor voodoo,
yeah,
but
but
not
it's
in
not.
New Orleans. It could exist in dark, sort of dark circles of
Yeah,
the Haitian religion. But from what I understand, it's not really a thing. It's sort of something that was made up as
yeah.
a
Hollywood.
misinterpretation. Yeah.
In the Middle Ages, there are times where people would pay to have a mass for the dead, said for their enemy who is still alive, as a
Mhm.
way to like try and get God to kill them or like get them registered with the dead. And that wasn't something you were supposed to do, but people did it. So every
Yeah.
religion
That's
also has things like that.
that's so
Yeah.
passive aggressive.
You're dead to
Hey.
me, so I'm praying for your dead soul.
Yeah, and the other thing like we talked about just a minute ago was that like perhaps people are thinking of this of voodoo as something that's dark and evil, one because they don't understand it, two because they don't like black people, and three because they are afraid of retribution. And so perhaps that is sort of where the voodoo doll came in, is that, this is a tool in voodoo to punish potentially just white people.
Yeah.
So that could be sort of where that comes from too. From that PBS show, Reverend Dr. Lady Bishop says, quote, "Witchcraft is dealing strictly with pins and needles and dolls and black magic." So she further, this is back in 87, she further insists that like voodoo dolls are type of witchcraft, something that she does not deal with, something that is not actually voodoo.
Can I just say I want
Yeah,
to change my name to Reverend Dr. Lady Bishop?
such a good
I just
name.
like it's one thing to have like a name that's like two first names or three first names. It's another thing to have just a name that's all
Four
identities.
titles.
Poor
Four
titles.
titles.
Yes.
She's like, I'm a reverend, a doctor, a lady, and a bishop.
And a bishop, yes,
Yeah.
like,
Her
and
LinkedIn
she
Yeah.
is
solves
stacked.
mysteries.
And she solves mysteries. She fights misinformation.
She
That part.
does, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Stacked LinkedIn right there. She's what I
Um,
really, she's the LinkedIn influencer I want to see. I don't want to hear about someone who's a crypto influencer, marketing specialist. I want to hear about someone who's a reverend, a doctor, a lady, and a bishop.
um, so another bit of lore that I think also kind of gets wrongfully attached to voodoo is like blood drinking or using blood for rituals. Whether or not it's true or false, it has a lot of negative connotations. But I did want to touch on this a little bit because this does happen in the movie where our creatures are taking the life force, although it's supposed to be blood draining. But it's a children's movie, so they're not going to show,
Yeah.
slicing and blood and stuff. But something that I kind of thought of was that maybe this is linked to the colonizers, so the French and Spanish, bringing like vampire legends over from
Yeah.
Europe. And so getting intertwined with beliefs and stories from the African enslaved peoples, maybe
Like
that's
the
something that's
yeah,
going on there.
like the Elizabeth Bathory, who we talked
Yes.
about, I think, in our Twilight episode, and she's probably going to come up if we ever talk about Snow White and the Huntsman, so we won't get into it too much now. But yeah,
Yeah.
Would now be a time to talk about the fact that like in this movie, the Scooby-Doo movie, I just love the sort of glossing over of multiple racial touch points to just sort of have this like melange du jour. Because basically they're like, cool, we worship a cat god, which is Egyptian. Let's not name
yeah,
check the religion. Then there's the girl who's dressed like a Romani or traveler. I don't know the terms right now.
yeah,
And so there's like that sort of just coded, like just in her outfit. And she's like, she's got green hoop earrings and like a red, vest. So of course
yeah.
she's magic. And
Y-
then there
Yeah.
were zombies. And then I don't know if we're spoiling it or
You can
not.
spoil it.
Yeah.
There were
Yeah,
werecats.
I forgot about the werecats and I
There
was
were
uh
werecats.
yeah.
The closest reference I could think of, which is interesting because now I'm wondering if it's a larger thing. I was struggling to think of like where had I seen characters like this before? Sleepwalkers by Stephen King, where they were like
Oh,
cat creatures that suck the life
yes.
force out of virgins. But I had
Oh,
never, so I
yeah.
didn't know if they were related to like an actual because there are always those like random like more obscure mythical creatures that not
yeah,
everybody
Yeah.
knows because there's like a
Yeah.
yeah.
hierarchy of like
The C
coolness and
tier ones. It's like
Yeah,
if
exactly.
dragons are your S tier,
yeah,
like a
Werecats are probably
cockroaches.
D.
Yeah,
yeah,
and
Yeah.
dryads.
dryads. Justice for the
Uh,
dryads.
Justice for dryads. They're totally chill. They're just trying to do their thing, man.
Yeah, they just want to dance, protect the trees, and flirt. Like, same.
Vibes.
yeah, the other thing is like what you said about the touchstone. There are zombies without there being voodoo, which is interesting.
Yeah,
It's completely taking that out of the picture. This is one of those examples where like we have a similar type of zombie where it's not inherently evil, it's not a flesh eater, um, and it's about the souls possessing the
yeah.
bodies. So it's different, but again, without there being anyone there controlling, it
Hmm.
takes out voodoo like
Yeah.
completely.
I think just here's my hot take. I think Night of the Living Dead? Well, I forget what the first zombie movie is. I feel like
Yep.
that kind of shifted
That's what
Yes.
we're
the
talking about
narrative.
next week.
Oh, my bad. Oh,
No,
but like
no.
no, but it
Great.
just sort of and I think it just sort of captured a certain anxiety of overpopulation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
I
I
Of
mean,
think
the
yeah.
when you think about some of these archetypes, like I mean, they tend to be related. Like one thing that I've just sort of been obsessed with is the idea of like, well, I never thought about it before, but like vampirism as the idea of like colonialism or colonization, because you have these like
yeah.
pale-faced people who suck the life force of other people, and their
Yeah.
superpower is generational wealth.
Yeah. I mean,
Yep.
Which is like,
they connect to European fears of the aristocracy that was leeching off
yeah,
of even the people of Europe, right? And the zombie very much with Night of the Living Dead, and we'll definitely get into that next week, represents the fears of the by oppressed minorities, the people of color rising up, amassing, and they can't be stopped, they can't be controlled. There's so many of them. And yeah, there's so much to unpack there, especially with like when that movie came out. So
Yeah. So I'm
yeah.
glad that you mentioned it because it means like my track of thinking is also aligned with yours. So it's like I'm not crazy. It's like,
Yeah.
no, there is a theme to this month.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I also want to talk about pre-Katrina occult in New Orleans and post-Katrina New Orleans occult stuff. Very briefly, so the first part is going to be sort of like actual facts, and the second part is kind of me just kind of spitballing. So this movie is, I said 10 years, but I guess it's even less than that. I don't know what it's like, maybe 6 or 7 years before Katrina happened. But the voodoo practitioner community in New Orleans was very plentiful. There was up to 3,000 people before Katrina. And I'm not going to get into the devastation of Katrina. Like it was horrible. and thousands of people died and thousands more suffered in many other ways. This community of 3,000 people went down to like 300. They had previously had, Haitian voodoo groups and New Orleans voodoo groups, but with so few practitioners left, they sort of merged groups to make their community and their religion stronger in the area. And there's also a documentary that it's called Hexing a Hurricane. And it basically starts with like a voodoo ceremony taking place at the start of hurricane season in, what was this, 2004, 2005, as a way to ask spirits for protection against incoming storms. And then chronicles the aftermath of Katrina in the weeks after this ceremony happens. So there was a very strong occult presence. They were definitely using it to help their community. They're trying to do something to help with any incoming storms that are happening with hurricane season. And then after the community is sort of wiped out, they have to rebuild it. And one of the things that I kind of started thinking about with post Katrina New Orleans and the occult there is that, especially with so much of voodoo being everything occult in New Orleans, for instance, like tarot readings, though there is some connection there, like psychics, voodoo dolls, again, still being persistent. There's a lot of, other darker things that people kind of are obsessed with and go to New Orleans to seek out.
Even though they don't have
So
actually anything to do with
right.
New
So
Orleans
like
voodoo. Yeah.
Madame Lalaurie, she often I think gets associated with New Orleans in general, but I also think because she had tortured enslaved people and the connection of like voodoo dolls and potentially retribution against
Mhm.
slave owners, that kind of gets attached to voodoo as well. But like sort of the potentially an influx of dark tourism in the area. I wonder if some of the occult even got darker, um, you know, with all the dread that happened from
Yeah.
the hurricane. But on top of that, that it drives tourism and the economy and helping rebuild the city. So I that was sort of something I kind of was throwing around. But the kind of thing I want to end the voodoo stuff on is that voodoo was actually one of the things that people blamed Hurricane Katrina on. So,
Bye.
there's
I thought
that.
it was the gays. I thought it was
It was
us.
That's
it
that's
was the
Sodom and
gays, it was
Gomorrah.
God and voodoo.
He's the god in voodoo.
Yep.
Wow. Lady Gaga's
That was
next
literally the
album. Yeah.
title of the article.
Oh,
Gay, I think it
really?
was God, gays, and voodoo, something about, like the American perception of Hurricane Katrina and stuff, and especially now we're dealing with the aftermath of two horrific historic
Yeah.
hurricanes in Florida, and in the Carolinas, people blaming it on crazy things. And so
I
it's like
mean,
As opposed to fossil fuels, which
as
we've
a
known about since Captain Planet, which was also in the 90s.
yeah,
Captain Planet.
Captain Planet.
Oh.
Where's that reboot? The why have we? Yeah. It also
Well,
it get
I mean, sorry, just very briefly to end Captain Planet, you know that it's being suppressed by the fossil fuels lobby. You know
it
that they're
is.
like, never, not in
Because
a,
Captain Planet cannot exist in a world, especially where there is a government that is actively saying that this is not happening. Like Captain
Yeah.
Planet, a reboot cannot exist. I understand
yeah.
that,
He'd end up being
but
an
it is a
anti-government
crime.
force.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
crime.
It's a
Absolutely.
crime. And I also just, whenever people want to say a disaster is God's wrath, I'm always reminded that like the story where there was the blind person and they're like, whose sin made him blind? And Jesus was like, that's not really the point. And like that's like a whole ass story in the Bible, and everyone just conveniently forgets that whenever it's a disaster. They're like, it's because of the gays.
Yep.
But
They
most
did that.
people didn't read the Bible, and if they did, they didn't understand it. I
I,
mean,
they only
it's
got to
like,
Sodom and Gomorrah and then they quit reading, so they only got the
Mhm.
first few chapters in. They got Noah's Ark, Adam and
I was
Eve,
gonna
and they're
say
like,
they don't go to the New Testament where Jesus is like saying stuff,
yeah. He's
It's
yeah,
literally like,
they're
just
Old
don't be a
Testament
dick.
Christians. Yeah.
yeah.
Jesus is literally
So
like, just don't be a dick. Feed the poor, y'all. And then where's the poor feeding?
Where's the poor feeding? I mean, okay, we can't, there's so much lore, but because I
Yes.
also could get into how Protestant churches only usually depict Old Testament figures and their stained glass windows.
yep.
But all right, let's keep
Anyway,
going. Let's keep going.
so we're gonna get into cat worship and werecats, because that is weirdly a big thing in this movie that I completely forgot about until
Out
watching
of
it.
left field.
Yeah,
It
for
really
people who
was.
haven't watched it, you're probably just like, what? Because I think with doing the research for the voodoo, and I was like, I know there's zombies, and I know that lady has to do with these zombies.
Mm,
I was like, oh, maybe she's like a voodoo practitioner. Maybe that's what it is. No, that bitch a werecat.
Sure,
Completely
Kat.
forgot. So, cat worship. Ancient Egypt, they loved cats so much. They have a couple goddesses that take the form of different types of cats, like lynxes and lions and stuff. Um, Mafdet was in the first dynasty, guarded the pharaoh's chamber from evil. And then Bastet is probably like the most widely known one.
Mhm.
Second dynasty goddess with the body of a woman, the head of a cat. She's more of a gentle protector. And then Sekhmet is
She
sort of like,
appeared in my D&D series.
yes, she did.
Metaphorical, yeah.
And then Sekhmet is sort of like the other side of that. She's another feline type goddess, more rageful and vengeful.
And we get
Um,
into this in our Gods of Egypt episode, an oldie but a goodie,
yes,
if you want to check it out.
but also, according to the text, the 1999 film, The Mummy, they are also guardians of the underworld. That's my touchstone for it. I know it also exists elsewhere. So, cats, a big thing. Cats and colonialism. Now, let's talk about that really quick. Apparently, cats did come to the quote New World. Happy Columbus Day, I guess, right? They came to the New World on ships. It's tomorrow, and I didn't
I
even realize
know. Oh,
Is it?
that.
Didn't
God.
they change it
Um,
to Indigenous Peoples Day?
well,
Depending
it
on
depends
where.
who you ask. Yep.
Oh my God.
Yes, it is in Indigenous Peoples Day.
And Columbus was canceled in his lifetime by the woman who did the Inquisition. Let's just acknowledge that.
The woman
ev-
who did the Inquisition was like, that guy's terrible. So let's remember that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so cats were brought over to the quote unquote New World on ships. They were known as ship cats, and they were working animals for a very long time before being domesticated. So dealing with like the pests on the ships, and then the pests once they got to wherever they landed and colonized. Um,
So there is a radical vegan somewhere saying cats are colonists and need to be sent back to
yep.
where they came
And that
from.
radical vegan is now me. No, kidding. Um, so yeah, I just thought that was like a little fun fact because I didn't even
Mm.
think about it. I just assumed that like cats are everywhere, but that doesn't make sense. But yeah, so I guess that ties in with the history
So,
of this movie. So
random question. So, why are there not people protesting that exterminators are taking jobs from cats?
there
There
you
are
Right.
go.
hard work. Give our cats their jobs back.
Yep.
I
I
know.
mean,
My
my
cat
cats
Cats
are
doesn't
and
earn.
children.
masters.
Cats and children. Put them to work.
Yeah, my cat is making me no money. She's napping right now. She
Wow.
doesn't even
You
have
know what?
any investment portfolios.
Mine too. Same.
Yeah, not even passive income. She's totally dependent on me. Such a Zoomer, such a Gen Z cat.
Yeah.
Or she Gen Alpha, I guess. Yeah.
Gen Alpha. Yep.
Yeah,
Oh
wow. No
God. I
respect.
have
She
Gen
loves
Alpha
Skibidi Toilet
children.
though. Yeah.
So we'll kind of end on werecats. So these are the feline version of a werewolf, which is canine. They're lycanthropic, so they shapeshift by the moon. Fun fact, Catholic witch hunting lore had it that witches could turn into cats. So that's a question
Yeah.
I have is like,
My
are
legacy.
these women witches?
Well, they
What
got
is it?
powers.
They end up getting powers by cursing
Yeah.
the
They're witch
moon
adjacent.
scar. Yeah, so it's like, yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's it's a lot of lore, but some
And there's
interesting
also the
stuff.
Harvest Moon.
Yep,
Remember the blood coral moon in the Little Mermaid remake? And you're like, someone tell me what a blood coral moon is.
and I never got the answer. Yeah, I had Harvest Moon here, was supposed to research it, but I was researching literally until the last second.
We had
Uh,
so much lore to unpack. So
yeah, so the Harvest Moon in this movie, it's kind of unclear again, just like the Coral Moon in the live action of Little Mermaid.
I mean,
It
it's
has
also like
mystical
the
powers.
alignment of planets in Hercules, where it's just like this is,
Yeah, it's a
and
thing.
honestly, I love that. I don't know. I think using astrology to be like to give yourself the ticking clock is a
Yeah.
great way. It doesn't always need to be explained. Like, does the fairy godmother say this is why my powers run out at midnight? No, it's just the rule and it gives us some stakes. And so to me, using astrology as your ticking clock, go off. Especially if
Yeah.
it's a magic related thing.
Yeah. I was also thinking about the clock that they have. It's a moon dial.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can actually use a it's a sundial.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have a moon equivalent because the moon
It might be keep
it's
track of the phases more than the time of night,
yeah,
right?
that's why I was confused. I was like, wait a second. I just thought of that. But
But
yeah,
does
Someone
the
in the comments
moonlight
let us
make
know.
enough light
that
to? Is that the point you're making?
yeah, so it
Mm,
would make enough light maybe on like a full moon, but the moon is like in a different spot a lot
yeah.
of times
But
because
I
of
don't know,
where
the
the Earth
moon's
is, and
ultraluminary though.
it is.
I don't think that they're that the Scooby-Doo universe, I don't think that they care that the laws of
Yeah,
physics also don't apply.
they do not apply.
Yeah.
You know what? There you go. That's all I needed. The laws of
Yeah.
physics do not apply in this universe. Why even think about a moon dial clock?
I
Yeah.
mean, the second something comes out of your ears, we've officially
Steam.
left planet Earth. Yeah, if because I mean it's one thing, it would be one thing if Scooby-Doo was the only one who did cartoony things. That's something that's a big question I have for you guys because it's like, why is it only Scooby-Doo and Shaggy? You never see Velma like so I mean, I don't know, what if Shaggy's a ghost?
He's
Well,
a
I was just
ghost
gonna
their
say
whole
it's all the
time.
weed they smoke.
There.
Yeah. Yeah,
Scrap. But
they're the
I
real
think
devil worshippers.
canonically
Yeah.
they all smoke in the mystery machine though.
Canonically,
I think so. Well, maybe not canonically. Head
Yeah.
canonically.
head
Yeah, there you
canonically.
go.
Yeah.
I forgot
Yeah.
what
Even
a canon
Velma, I
was.
feel like Velma would be she's the DD.
Oh,
Velma's the
maybe.
DD. I feel like Daphne doesn't smoke, but she does harder drugs.
Daphne has like a little cocaine like pill
Like she
box that
doesn't
she
do it
Sarah Michelle
regularly.
Gellar in oh my God, what's the
Cruel
movie?
Intentions.
Oh,
Yes,
Cruel
Cruel
Intentions.
Intentions. Exactly.
I feel
Sarah
like
Michelle Gellar played Daphne. Yep.
Daphne at a party. Fred will be
With
like, "Ah, I
party.
don't want to, but then later he will. I don't know. That's just the
Smoke or do
do
cocaine?
cocaine.
Oh,
Oh,
but I feel like
no.
if Fred is doing cocaine, Fred is also bottoming. Just I mean, he wears an ascot. He's definitely on the bi
No,
spectrum.
everyone in this van is some part of the Rainbow Army. They
Fair, that's
are
fair.
all friends of Dorothy in their own way. They have like different, there are different spots on the Kinsey scale, but I think you could ship any one of these characters with the other.
Except for the
And
dog.
obviously the dog, not the dog, not the dog.
Okay. Just talking about the human
Yeah,
characters.
Although,
yeah.
hold on. I mean, they might have been like this. Speaking of witches and psychics, they might have predicted puppy culture.
Oh no, yeah,
And
probably.
the year of our Lord 2024, there's probably a group of people who will solve a mystery and they will look just like this.
Yeah.
We've got a lipstick lesbian, we've got a nerd, we've got a tall stoner, we've got a himbo, and we've got a guy in a pup mask with an eating
Uh-huh.
disorder. And they solve a mystery.
Yeah.
They pull off Donald Trump's face and they're like, "You are Elon Musk." Boom.
I love it.
Uh,
Yeah, that's definitely true. That is correct. Yeah, but this is this gang you can ship them all. I don't ship them with the dog. The dog has like watched some things, but does he
yeah.
understand it? No, and that's okay. Uh,
Ruh-roh.
ruh-roh,
I love that they never talk
ruh-roh.
about the fact that Scooby-Doo can talk and they can hear him. Like Garfield, like there were rules where
Yeah.
some people could acknowledge the dog and some people couldn't.
It's Cinderella rules. It's like
Mm,
she could understand the mice, but like no one else really does. But it's
Mhm.
because the mice only talk to her because they like her. So I feel like
mm.
Scooby talks to, at least in this movie, it's the canon where he only talks to them because like they're his
No,
friends.
he talks to the gardener too.
But does the
And the
gardener
woman.
understand?
That's fair. That we don't
True.
know.
because they don't seem to respond to Scooby. Like they don't converse with Scooby.
True.
So do they just hear rah, 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 rah? Okay, he's talking. But Fred and Shaggy and Daphne and Velma are like they understand.
These are the
It's all
hard-hitting
that weed they're
questions.
smoking.
They
All right,
yeah.
let's get into
And
this
that was
plot.
gonna be a plot element in my gritty, goofy reboot. Uh
Love it.
yeah. All right, so this the plot of this movie. This is very similar to the live action Scooby-Doo in that it opens with
Uh-huh.
them solving a mystery and they eventually start to kind of they're tired of it being the same. Old man Jenkins is hiding treasure. He doesn't want anyone to find it, and they drift apart.
But it's not antagonistic like in the live action
Yeah.
movie.
And I actually really like this because I think there's been a
Yeah,
lot of modern adaptations that think you need to add an antagonism to them. And I think it's honestly very real that like many a friendship group, you get
you just grow
older,
apart.
you go your separate ways, but you don't have any like, "Ugh, I'm so sick of that bitch Velma." It's just like, "Oh, I wonder what Velma's up to. I should text her." And
Exactly.
then you like forget and you move on. And that's just what's going on with them. So Daphne is a pretty successful TV host.
Coast to coast with Daphne Blake. More
I
like
mean,
ghost to ghost. Am I right? Loved that interview.
I'd watch that show.
I would too. Chris, put it on TV right now.
Yeah, Fred's her producer. It's a steady cam.
Yeah, one man production crew.
So
He's sound, camera, you know.
she's on the ground, you know. She's like Anderson Cooper in the eye of the storm. He she'll do
Yeah,
whatever. And I that is Daphne. Is she's like, I'll do anything and I'll look good doing it. I'll do the
Right.
craziest shit you've never seen and I'll look great.
so the key point of the old mystery is that it was just another guy in a mask. And so
Mhm.
she's talking about how, like, yeah, I'm about to go and find like real ghosts, real haunted houses.
She's about to be a ghost hunter.
Yeah.
Another great adaptation would be
Zach
like
Bagans
a
who?
Ghost Adventures spoof with the Scooby Gang. So she's trying to do that. Fred's her producer. Are they dating? Are they in an
Mm,
open relationship that's not really working well for them because they don't want to communicate about their boundaries?
wow. Or
Are they
are
on again, off
they
again?
still just friends who like have not accepted the fact that they're in love?
So, because if they're being drained and there's something you said something about people being drained for being virgins, are they all virgins? You
Oh my
know, and like
God.
Fred and Daphne
Wow.
have been on again, off again, but they're holding out for each other, but
They're
they
just
won't commit.
soaking.
Yeah, they're just
They're just
soaking.
soaking.
Fred's Mormon. I could see it.
Big reveal.
Big
That
reveal.
explains. Oh my God. Actually, we don't know what their underclothes are. They could be magical.
True.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, we
yeah.
haven't seen Return to Zombie Island. Maybe it's revealed in that one. So yeah, I was like, because friend Daphne, they've always had a thing, but are they together?
I think it's implied that they are, but
But
like
they talk about other people
hmm
and they don't
they
like
do.
hearing it. So it's that's why I'm like, are they in an open relationship? But they're just like
I
really
think,
bad at establishing their boundaries, and it's like really uncomfortable for everyone.
I think given the time frame, they would probably be open in 5 years.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
in a post-ethical slut world, this Daphne,
Yeah.
mind you, Zombie Island Daphne, who is like a ball busting career woman, she would find this book, Ethical Slut, and be like, Fred, we're doing this. Fred, subservient straight bottom, would be like, Slay, I'm totally down.
Yeah. Okay.
Suddenly Velma's like, hey, I'm in town. And they're like, let's do it.
Again, it all tracks the most shippable gang. So I mean, again, they're based inspired by the Archies friend group, which is another famously shippable group. So that's what's going on with Fred and Daphne. Will they, won't they? X's open, who knows? Velma is working at a bookshop. She runs a spooky mystery bookshop.
She
She
owns a
owns
book.
it. It's her own bookstore. It's probably in Salem. And Shaggy and Scoob are, floating between jobs. Right now, they're in pre 9/11 airport security.
yep.
They're in customs and they eat all the contraband food.
and then they get fired.
They
And I'm
get
like, yeah, that
fired.
makes sense.
Yeah. But
One of
what
the best
happens to the
lines,
contraband food? Does it just get thrown away? I feel like that's how it would contaminate everything.
I don't
Or
know, but
or
the
does it
best,
contaminate it from your poop after you eat it? But the best line,
I think
Hannah.
it's more just if you're not paying duties and taxes on it. I
yeah,
don't
it
think that
has
they're
nothing to do with contemmination. I was like, what do
yeah.
you think
Well, there
customs
That's
does?
there are
agriculture. That's animals and agriculture. You
okay.
can't
Yeah,
bring live plants because the live
yes.
Yeah.
plants could have fungus. But
And
like so foodstuffs, I think it's really more just them being dicks.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
because
you
I was
need to
like, isn't
pay.
are there bacteria in the cheese?
I mean, there probably is. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
gorgonzola because they're both so full of food,
They're
and
round.
that the guy, like their boss, comes in and they're like, "It's okay. There's a couple of gorgonzolas left." He goes, "You're a couple of gorgonzolas." The best line in the movie. So good.
Writing is back, baby.
We're so back in 1998. We're so back.
Uh, and because they see that Daphne on the TV though, and she's like, "Oh, I miss them." They're like, "Oh, we miss you too, Daph." And I was like, "This is honestly so wholesome."
Yeah.
Because so they're gonna go on this trip, and then it's her Daphne's birthday, and Fred surprises her by getting the gang back together for them to all to go on this trip with her, and she's so happy to see them. I was like, "This is
Yeah.
so pure." I love this. She's just like, "Guys, we're all together. We're gonna go on this trip."
Yeah.
Like it is like seeing old friends. We're just like, "Ah, this is so great."
Well, do you think some of that was to bring like some of the nostalgia to the show? Because I mean, this you said that this was like the first show in a while, so they were
Mm,
probably
Yeah.
like, it's like, I mean, I think that the fact that they had whites to their eyes and they had
Yeah.
modern dress was like a big. I mean, a couple did. I love how Shaggy and Velma just stay getting the
yeah.
shit end of the stick, but like Daphne and Fred looking cute and modern.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's a good point. Like maybe they stage a reunion in the movie so that everyone feels the like, yeah, we're
Yeah.
all reuniting with them.
Yeah. I think that
Yeah.
no, I think that's why, it is like a meta thing in a way that really works where it works in the story, but it also is like we hadn't seen them since George Orwell in 1984. And
Mhm.
like they would like and even then that was like in a cameo capacity. Like they were coming in and out. Like for a while it was Scooby, Shaggy, or Scrappy, and then
Mhm.
sometimes it was just Scooby and Scrappy, sometimes Scooby's other brother, and then
Scooby Dum,
Daphne.
I think.
Yeah, Daphne was around. Like they brought Daphne back. And then there was that kid that was with them in like the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo,
Mhm.
which was the one of the other times where they had like real monsters. There's like Ghoul School. There's like stuff, but like they didn't have the whole gang, and so this was like a back to basics in a way,
Can't wait
even
to do
though it was
Ghoul
a
School.
subversion.
Oh my
Ghoul School,
God.
yeah.
But there's also, I think, a commentary on the fact that like it was always somebody in a mask. Like I think that
Hmm.
that was even meta. Because I mean, I think that like if you think about like this is the first time they were like kind of breaking the fourth wall and acknowledging, what people had to say about Scooby-Doo.
And I love that because now breaking the fourth wall and dealing with like the legacy of something is like so common, but I like the way they did in this movie because it wasn't like that's crazy. It was just kind of like "Ugh, I'm so sick of it being something in the mask," and they used it
Yeah.
to inform character arcs and
Yeah.
like be part of the world and the story instead of like a and now we all wink at the audience
Yeah.
like we're making
Hmm.
13 times this movie was self-aware on BuzzFeed, like uh so they're reuniting and then we get this montage road trip. It's just a ghost in a mask.
That song goes so hard.
Uh
It's so good. Yeah, and like she says, we're going to New Orleans, so it's like they're probably like in the southeast,
yeah.
right? And they see some more guys in masks.
They're stopping at psychics, at abandoned ship casinos,
Yeah.
running into all this. And yeah, it's just Daphne.
Daphne's not having it.
She's unwinging it up. She's like, I'm trying to make this show, and everything's just fake. Until, they're in New Orleans. They're actually in New Orleans Square from Disneyland. And
Mm-hmm.
they're approached by this culturally ambiguous woman Lena Dupree. And she's like, "Oh, I heard you're looking for a haunted house." And she's like, "My employer's house is very haunted." And Daphne, who's just like, "This is all fake," is like, "Okay." But Fred is like, "Hubba hubba," like, "Oh." Yeah, and Daphne's like, "Ugh." But they're gonna go on this. They have to get Shaggy and Scoob eating their huge po' boy sandwiches. Now I want a
Yep.
sandwich.
I know, me too.
I'm craving a sandwich so hard right now. And they go on this ferry ride. And it's very, I mean, I was just joking when I said they're obviously that they're in Disneyland New Orleans Square, but this whole kind of journey is very Disneyland ride, where it's you get on a
Mhm.
ferry and you like go through they build the ambiance. Uh
Yeah, they're going through the bayou. The fairy guy is this like husky mustachioed gentleman with a Cajun or a Creole Cajun, it's
mhm.
Cajun accent, I think
Yeah.
would
He
be.
also looks vaguely Australian. Like he just sort of has like I totally was like I was like because by now I'm like okay
Oh, are
we've
you
jumped
talking about
culture.
the baddie guy, the snake guy? What's his
That's what I
name?
was talking about. Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
wait, did you?
yeah.
Oh, did you mean the
I
ferry
was
boat
talking
Yeah.
about
captain?
yeah, the ferry
Yeah.
boat captain. But yeah,
Okay.
he looks like
Crocodile Dundee.
yes, Crocodile Dundee.
He's
Yeah.
I thought that too.
his voice actor would later play the Firefly in Princess and the Frog.
Oh, fun fact.
This is
Hmm.
the ferry boat captain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he's talking about that. What is that big? I want to say Big Bertha, but that's not the fish's name.
Oh,
Big Mona.
Big
Big
Mona.
Moon.
Big Bertha was a level in Lego Island 2 where you had to catch a fish that was really hard to catch.
Oh, so very similar.
Very
But yeah,
similar.
she's a big catfish.
Yeah, and no one can catch her. And this snakebite scum bucket guy is like, these tourists, I'm trying to catch Big Mona.
Yeah, because they almost get so Scooby and Shaggy get like thrown off the boat
Yeah,
from antics,
they're always
hijinks,
anticing. Yeah,
and they almost get eaten by alligators.
yeah.
Mhm.
So
Foreshadowing.
that's a very real thing. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
also foreshadowing.
And so Snakebite hates the tourists. He's giving me the energy of someone who would be killed off in the opening sequence of like a True Blood episode.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
He also looks like the red herring murderer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like everybody thinks he's the killer and he's not. Now,
yeah.
one thing I don't get about Big Mona is if these guys are so obsessed with food and you can eat catfish, why are they not more excited at the prospect of catching Big Mona to eat her?
Mm.
Yeah,
That was just sort of a hole in the plot.
it very much that whole thing gives like
Unwatchable film.
emotional.
Cancelled. Not the catfish erasure.
It it very much gives like you're playing at like a tabletop RPG, like a horror themed tabletop RPG, and this is like a side quest that the party just ignores, and so it just stays. Oh, whatever. What was the point of Snakebite guy and Big Mona? And it's like, oh, you get some plus XP items if you like helped him catch Big Mona or whatever.
And
That
you get a wonderful catfish dinner.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or I had to change the story because you just didn't care about interacting with him, so I had to introduce this
Yeah.
gardener guy.
I
Yeah.
had to give all his lore to someone else.
So they go to this big house, and
It is a plantation house.
plantation. It is a plantation. This is
It's
actually where
exactly
Ryan Reynolds
where
and Blake Lively got married. Yeah,
yes, it is. It is. It's the same house,
yeah,
but in cartoon form.
in cartoon form. The this is where I could go on my dog owners in America and Los Angeles rant because they say, "How's Scooby with cats? I didn't know you had a dog." And they're
Mm.
like, "Oh, he's great with cats." And he's not. And he's not on
He's
leash.
so bad with cats that he's not even good with the catfish.
Yeah.
Just a fish. Just happens to have like a whisker.
And you call them rats. Or how do I do it? All
Yeah,
right. I can say
rats.
row rats. Yeah. So he's immediately sees all these cats and it's
And
just
that's
like
a lot of cats. My dream
chasing them
house.
chasing them around, harassing them, destroying the garden. And they try and make the cats look bad and be kind of like, oh, they're like, and it's like they're not antagonizing him, he's antagonizing them. He's chasing them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And he needs to be on a leash if he can't be controlled like that.
I
that
agree.
part.
As a dog owner,
Hmm.
uh, but of a dog who does not leave my side, we still put him on a leash.
Yeah.
Also, at first I was like angry that they're making the cat seem mean, but I'm like, okay, it's like a tonal thing that like we're not supposed to like cats because cats are they're gonna be the
Yeah.
baddies later.
Yeah, but that's part of this anti-cat propaganda. And you know what cats don't do? Chase chase people.
Mm.
Like dog parks in LA, basically like a purebred fighting ring. Everyone got their pandemic baby and did not train them.
Yeah.
And it's like that's the thing, is like cats don't bother you. And I love dogs. Even my neighbor dog that barks at me, it's barking while holding its little toy, and I'm like, you're
Oh.
too pure for this world. Like I love you, even though you are annoying objectively, but I also love you. But you go hiking with a friend who has a dog, and their dog's on a leash, and their dog's well behaved, and then they're being almost attacked by other dogs who are just
Yep.
running around crazy. And it's like this dog is a well behaved dog, but if another dog jumps at them, like they
Yep.
might bite, they might do, because someone's jumping out. Like if someone just ran up to me and jumped on me, I don't know if I'd bite them, but I might push them. It's like it's just unfair to the dogs because then they're more likely to do something that they're gonna get in trouble for.
Something
You
that is
know,
out of character for them.
yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah. So Scooby needs to be on a leash. I know you love Scooby, and he's the light of your life, and you can hear him talk, but you're at somebody's home. Someone is working that
Yes.
garden. Those cats, this is their home. They shouldn't be harassed.
Can we talk about how these people, these four teenagers, just make themselves at home in this house in a state in which they do not live? Because I
Yes.
mean, after all of the property damage that Scooby does, just the fact that these people
Velma
make
goes and does
themselves,
some.
yeah, Velma does, Shaggy and Scooby helping themselves to this person's, like, I was like, the privilege, far too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
They show
wild.
they show up, Scooby's instantly making a mess, and they say sorry, but they should be way more sorry. I would be mortified.
Mortified.
As
Yeah.
if I hadn't been cut from the show and I was still there as the fifth member, I'd be so
That's
sorry.
why you got cut because you
Yeah.
would not accept Scooby's behavior and you're like and they're like, I'm sorry, but if you're not with us, you're against us.
You're against us. I was like, these are not Midwestern teens for sure. They're definitely coastal.
I think they're supposed to be SoCal, right?
They've got to be
Yeah,
SoCal. That's a
it's
SoCal
giving a
level of,
vibe.
sorry. Like, where, yeah, if you were Midwestern, you'd be like going into shock because you've never been so rude before in your life by proxy. Yeah, so they just show up at this house because they're like, it's haunted. We're here to do a ghost show. And Simone is like, all right. And you're kind of like, why are they just letting them in? Maybe.
I just got just now that like she was the honeypot to lure them in, and that
Yep.
they
Yeah.
were not long for this world. I was like, oh, connecting the
Yeah.
dots. We're solving the mystery right now, you guys.
Yeah, we are them. Because I remember thinking like, why are they just letting them into their house to film a show? Usually they'd be like, get out of my house.
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, Lena, put on your corset bustier kind of thing, go into town, find some horny bisexuals, and get them to this house. And so they're in this house. They're trying to do a tour. She's talking about the history of Moonscar Manor and like Captain Moonscar the pirate who was here, and like that this house had been built from his parts of his ship, and just like all this very interesting lore of the house. I'd be like, oh, I'd go on this tour. Like, I want to learn this. And
Well,
how it's
it's
a
clearly
pepper
a plant.
plantation.
It's clearly a plantation.
They're
It
not
is a
saying who
plantation
worked the
house.
plantation.
Exactly. And they do not at all, like they're doing this history tour, they're not at all referencing the potential slave history that was here,
But there are soldiers from the Civil War.
The
which
Confederacy.
implies slavery.
But I also love how they totally are like, it feels like pro-Confederate propaganda because they were like, oh yeah, they hid from the Union soldiers. No moral judgment, no commentary on it, just
Mhm.
chilling.
That
True.
is kind of for a long time though, how we like
Yeah.
talked about the Civil War. Like or like you watch Gone with the Wind and it's like they're burning everything. And then
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh, but yeah." It was like, "Oh, this is different from like the bad guys in Sound of Music, who are the real life bad guys."
Yeah.
So while they're doing this tour, Shaggy and Scooby are eating and they get these letters being etched into the wall,
By a
you know,
mysterious
hand,
wind. Yeah.
wind, and it's saying get out. And the rest of the gang runs in because they hear them screaming and they see it, they record it being etched in beware.
Hmm.
And they go back to review the footage and they see a pirate ghost carving it in.
Yeah, they enhance the footage
Yeah.
From the camera. I love
from
how
the camera on the tiny
Fred
view screen.
Fred is such an AV wizard
Yep.
that he's able to do SVU style
Yes.
Yeah.
video tricks.
CSI enhanced the
Yes.
video.
Yeah. He's NCIS's Abby in this. Well, she was
The push of a
biology,
button.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Push of a button on their his handheld camcorder.
Well, he explains it. He's like, okay, I'm gonna turn up the darkness and adjust the sharpness, and boom.
And we also get a moment of Velma levitating.
Yeah.
Dua Lipa
Dua Lipa.
levitating. Yeah. And dealing with her skirt.
Yes.
Very relatable to me as I try and figure out like what toga I might wear for my Cupid costume, trying to be like, okay, how am I gonna sit in this? She's regretting her outfit choices, but they're dealing with this ghost, and then Velma just starts tearing up the wall.
Yeah, she's like inspecting it. She goes, huh, there's something behind here. And I'm like, yeah, it's the wall, Velma. And then just like starts chipping away what is definitely lead paint.
Yeah.
And then she grabs a spatula and just scrapes it.
And Simone is
She
like, what are you
finds a
doing to my
clue,
house? Yeah.
looking for clues. Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, I'm just looking for clues. Your house? Whatever.
Casual.
It's a clue to me.
Yeah. I love the casual approach to property damage. They're just like, it's in search of a clue.
Yeah.
All's fair in mysteries and clues.
I mean, she might have a really thriving business, so she's like, I'll pay whatever. I'm
Yeah, I mean, she's got all the Spooktown mysteries or whatever at the
Yeah.
beginning. She's got them all, so she's putting them on hold for somebody
Yep.
for two
That's
weeks
a
from next
big
Tuesday.
spender.
Yeah,
That's a
she's a
big
big
spender.
spender. So they discover, okay, this was built from Moonscar Manor, and they're trying to put together the pieces. They're going to dinner. There's also this gardener who Daphne and Velma think is hot, much to Fred's chagrin. And he's kind of like, stop ruining my garden and get
Yeah.
off my lawn. I did all this work. And I'm like, fair. But they're getting ready for dinner. They're brought to their rooms, their separate rooms, and it's like, oh, you're gonna have a beautiful view of the harvest moon, Fred. And I love though that Daphne actually, as much as she's like, okay, Fred, you want to get with Lena, she actually isn't antagonistic to Lena, but she like
Yeah.
is like, oh, Lena, this room's great, and then she turns and Lena's gone.
Yeah.
Because Daphne's a girl's girl. She's not going after Lena, but Lena, not a girl's girl.
So I don't know if we really talked about it, but Simone, she's very much like, oh, the hauntings have just begun. Like she knows that they're gonna ramp up. So
Yeah.
like
She's like, get ready.
this is a pattern.
Yeah, she's like, this is just normal. Like get used to it. And while they're trying to have dinner, they're like, no dogs at the table, and you got to eat in the kitchen. And I'm like, again, that's kind of a fair rule. And that they go to the kitchen where the cats are eating, maybe not the best planning, and then they're
They get
going,
a they get like a kind of a picnic of
yeah,
a crawfish boil.
yeah, because Lena's like, I have an idea. They can eat in the van because they're like, the dog will have to eat outside. I'm like, well, he's not behaved enough to be in the house. Even though
Yeah.
he's like, what dog? Which is a funny bit.
Such a funny bit. Rule
Uh,
3.
Scooby
Writing
is
is
con
back in 1998.
Scooby is unsure of his identity in this world. And I'm like, wow, he really is another part of the
He
Rainbow
does not
Army.
identify
Yeah.
as a dog.
Yeah.
that's fair.
Uh,
Trans-species, you guys.
species. He's what everyone is complaining about in the elementary schools, even though that's not a real thing happening in elementary schools.
Exactly. Yep.
Um, so they he's
They
eating
think
out.
Scooby-Doo is a documentary.
Yeah. They're like, this is the future liberals want. They're
A bunch of
eating.
bisexual solving mysteries. I mean,
Yes.
that's kind of what we want.
Uh, so now he's in the car with Shaggy, and they're having dinner, and this is where it's Fred makes some what is the comment he makes at the pecan pie?
It's
Like
supernatural.
super, and not a second, like instantly, Daphne's like, Fred, you are so corny.
Corny. Yeah.
And that became a meme recently where people were like, she was really holding that in. Like she's been holding that in, and this was like her last straw. And I get it because she's in this semi-open relationship with ill-defined boundaries, and he's not only is he flirting in front of her, he's doing it so embarrassingly cringy. And
Yeah.
she's like, get this out of my face. Like, calm down. It's like every guy who's like, oh, I love dad jokes. I'm always like, oh, you're gonna get annoying so fast.
Yeah.
Sorry
He
to the
also
dad joke community.
he also didn't wear an ascot, which I thought was like that was a fun little Easter egg that he put on the ascot, and he was like, "No, bad idea."
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're eating and they're talking about the history and they hear more screaming from Scooby and Shaggy. And so they go outside for some antics because first they're the cats on top of the van bugging Scooby's. And they start driving the van, knocking the cats off. And I'm like, abuse. I'm ki
Animal abuse.
Animal abuse done by an animal. Animal on animal violence. And they're driving around, the cats are flying off, and then they like end up in this ditch and they see a skeletal hand, and then they see lightning and storms, and what we assume is evil green magic coming
Mm-hmm.
from the sky, animating the skeleton is Captain Moonscar.
Yep. Dun dun dun.
It's a skeleton A-lister. This isn't
It
pirate number
is.
five. This is, yeah.
This is Moonscar himself. Yeah. And did we talk about how like there's supposedly his treasure on the
Yeah.
island? Yeah. So like that's why Fred was like, "Oh, yeah, see it's going to be a guy in the mask." So,
Yeah. He wants it to be fake. Daphne's like, no, this is real.
mhm.
And they see the real the zombies, Fred or Shaggy and Scoob, and so they're running around and all these zombies are coming after them. And they're all
Yeah.
different eras of zombie,
Yeah.
different pirates, Confederate soldiers,
Yeah, behind
tourists.
me there's like this businessman.
It's
Yeah.
Jimmy
Um
Hoffa.
Oh my God, what if it is? This is where he went. We found him. But yeah, there's like some pirate guys, another businessman. Um, yeah. Oh, and then here's like a lady in like a
Hmm.
dress, like maybe she's like a tourist. Because there was some people with like Hawaiian shirts and like
Yeah.
And the
cameras.
cameras, yeah.
Yeah,
And
so like
because
tourists.
there had been disappearances on this island, as Velma pointed out. She did an early Google.
Yes,
Yeah,
Well, but that was was that before Google?
I think so,
I think
right?
In
so.
the 90s. Yeah, she did research.
Yeah.
Yep. She
She
read an encyclopedia or a newspaper. She went to the library.
Yeah. Well, she had an eidetic memory. I think she just knew she was a
Yep.
know-it-all. Although, I mean, again, I think I said this earlier, they nerfed her. She was
Yeah.
Yeah.
just so like neutral and bland. Like,
She
I feel,
becomes the damsel in distress
yeah.
because
Yeah.
she's levitating,
Dua Lipa.
And
Limpa.
she said that word, what did Jinkies? Was that
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Dinkies or
Jinkies.
Jinkies. Yeah.
Jinkies? She just said it a lot. And I'm like, do you have anything to add, Velma?
There's a great TikToker who does like she does all these bits where it'll be like the event planner at like Sleeping Beauty's christening or like the angel who's like unsure of whose side they're on during like Lucifer's rebellion. Like she just does all these like side characters and one is like Scooby-Doo T or like Mystery Incorporated's like PR manager. And she's like, oh, you stop asking about the dog. Or just like, Velma, I need you to stop saying jinkies. It sounds like a drug or a slur. Fred,
Did
you
we
need to
also
talk
talk
more because
about
Velma keeps saying jinkies.
did we also talk about the mirror? Because like
They see the Confederate
in
soldier.
the mirror,
Yeah.
And Velma, because I was like, Velma doesn't ever lose her glasses, but this is the only time she does, is where like she like gets knocked behind the mirror
Mhm.
and her glasses fall off. But yeah, they're like it's the property of this like Confederate soldier. So yeah,
Yeah.
like they see a ghost in the mirror.
And that was a clue because her glasses were dirty because she didn't have her lens cloth. And it was
Oh
like,
yes, that's
this
Oh
right.
yeah.
this was also, I gotta level with you guys. This was also like a pretty good mystery because there
Yeah.
were clues and everything that didn't make sense upon talking about it. I'm just like, oh, these were all clues.
Yeah. Like
Yes.
I was like, that's a weird detail that she doesn't have her glasses cleaner. And you just didn't I
Yeah.
didn't even I'm an adult watching this kid's movie and that didn't even hit me as a clue. I'm just like,
That's
oh
why
yeah.
this movie still holds up.
And
Yeah,
writing a
it
good
sucks.
mystery is
It's hard.
harder. It's harder than you
Yeah.
think. I think everyone thinks, oh, it's just, but it's hard. I struggle. Like
Yeah.
I've written murder mysteries, and I don't think they're only okay. They were funny, but it's hard to write a really strong mystery.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because Lena's the honeypot. This is literally like Taken.
this is
Yep.
Taken. Yeah,
This is Taken.
This is a Lizzie McGuire movie. Yeah. So they're now like they're all running around in the garden. We get these kind of homages to like classic Scooby-Doo running from the monster, they run into Bo and we get it's like similar to a shot from the old credit sequence with like the spooky kind of like I don't know like lantern guy where they look up at his
Mm,
eyes. So they're scared of Bo and it's always like Bo's missing whenever the shady things are happening.
yeah.
What I love is when the lady, what was the lady who owned the house?
Simone.
Simone.
Simone, when Simone's like, quickly give them some lanterns. I was like, girl,
It's like, ma'am, what century are we in?
She doesn't
although maybe
know.
it's another clue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I was like, oh, it's weird that she has a French accent when if her family has had this house for that many generations, she wouldn't have a French accent anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, also, I did look up, so they do use some interesting wordplay. So her last name is Lenoir,
Mhm.
uh, or Lenoir, I guess. So basically like the darkness. Um, and then the hog that Crocodile Dundee has is named
Oh,
Mojo.
yeah, I forgot about the hog.
And Mojo, that means like it's like a talisman, like a
Mhm.
good luck talisman, not just like you get your mojo back kind of thing. So yeah, some
Not just
fun
watch Mojo.
wordplay. And not just Watch Mojo or Ms.
Miss
Mojo, which is what
Mojo.
I always get fed because I don't know.
Gender. Yeah.
Because gender.
Yeah. So yeah, there is a warthog, but and the warthog is chasing Scooby at one point in this too because Scooby disrupts the hunt for Big Mona
Again.
again. And so they're just running around, it's chaos, and they find they see these zombies and they knock one out. And they're like, oh, obviously it's a guy in a
Yeah,
mask.
Daphne like it
Yes.
like reaches out for her and she's like flip. It
Flip.
was awesome.
Yeah. She even says hiya.
Yeah. And
She's
I
like,
think
I've been talking with Miss Piggy as like her and Miss Piggy definitely were on The View together at some point,
mhm, mhm.
and they did some martial arts training. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's where she's like Fred's like trying to help her and she goes, I can help myself, thank you.
Yeah.
Feminist
Iconic.
icon Daphne Blake.
Yeah, this is when
Yeah, who
feminism
knew?
won. Yeah. 1998. Uh so they open or they're trying to rip off the mask and
Not a
it's not
mask.
ripping. It's a head. It's a head that they rip off and they're tossing around
Like a
a,
hot potato.
a corpse's skull.
That thing must stink.
Yeah.
Because it's like a bayou skeleton that has been
Mhm.
reanimated. Ugh,
That
the
cannot smell
scent.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're bopping that head around and they're like, oh my gosh, the monsters, it's a real zombie.
Yeah, it gets its head back and it pops it back on.
And so they're running around again like crazy. Velma's with Bo because she's suspecting him. And he's like, why are you treating me like a suspect? She's like, you are, bitch. Like,
Stop
act like it.
acting suspect, suspect.
Yeah. And they're running around with all these zombies. Scooby and Shaggy end up in like this. chamber and they see four voodoo dolls with
Uh,
like little pieces of clothing,
Well, Daphne's has hair sticking out of
hair
it.
sticking out.
Uh-huh.
Fred's has the ascot,
I
and
Yes.
think they didn't
Velma.
they all have little ascots? Like I feel like it was like there were little like the cloth was tied around their necks, which was kind of like a
Yeah.
little Easter egg for
Yeah, like the glasses cleaner and
yeah.
Yep.
yeah. So they find these voodoo dolls. They're just, but Scooby and Shaggy are just too scared to really do anything. So they're just
They're playing with
They're
dolls.
playing with dolls, and
uh,
then it's happening to them in
in the yeah. They're like jumping around, flying around, and so they're eventually the four other teens, or I don't know how old Bo is. I don't know how old these characters are because they have jobs, so
they're
they're but not
timeless.
teens
Yeah,
They're
the
timeless.
timeless.
like Cher. Yes. Yeah, are they're too old to be meddling kids. Wow, you know you're old when you age out of being a meddling kid.
I know,
Damn.
right?
So they all get captured with the help of the voodoo dolls. And this is where Simone and Lena pull out their backstory reveal.
Yeah, because Lena honeypots them into
Oh, because they get back
the
in the house.
underground.
They get back in
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
house and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so like what's going on?" And she's
scary.
like, "This is where they used to hide from the Union soldiers." She's like, "Here's
Yep.
the tunnel."
And
And
then she really lays it on thick for Fred, and it's like, oh, she's so scared. And then they walk through the tunnel, and then that's where they meet Simone
yeah,
and the ritual
they're like
set up.
voodoo ritual and they get all
And
tied
then this is where it gets a little Mad Libsy because it's like cool. And then we worship. Okay, so we worship a cat god, but we're also witches. And then we get
Yep.
possessed, and then we become werecats, and then we're also immortal.
This
It's
is very
just
much the Stephanie Meyer School of World Building, where you
yeah.
can have all the powers, yeah, they get trapped with the by using the dolls. They get tied up and they're
And
like, yeah,
it's just Bo and
Bo,
then Daphne, Fred, and Velma, because
yeah.
Shaggy and Scooby are anticing
Yeah. And they're like,
elsewhere.
we don't want to drain that. They didn't realize they didn't capture the BDE of Shaggy, so they're like, we don't want his energy. They're like,
Yeah.
we want Bo, so they reveal their backstory, their tragic backstory was that they were settlers. And
Settlers, yep.
you're
Very
like,
specific wording.
yeah, of a cat cult, of an
Yep,
Egyptian cat goddess or cat
Well, they don't
god.
name Egyptian. They
They're
just
just
they
a cat deity. But if you
yep.
look up cat deities, you
E-
basically that's what you get, the
Egypt.
Egyptian.
That's all
yeah.
you get.
And so they're just like, yeah, we just do that and no more questions, please. The cat worshipping settlers in Louisiana. And then the pirates come and attack us and they chase us into the bayou, most of our people, and we get eaten.
by
They get eaten by
by
alligators,
alligators. And then we
which is
go,
pretty dark, honestly.
yes. It's like they're not like murdering them like with swords and stuff. There's no like fight. It's literally just running at them to get them to go into the bayou. And then you just see the
Out.
alligators get in and then that's it. Yeah, then they go to their like altar and they scream at the sky and they're begging their cat deity to curse the pirates. And so basically it then also curses them to transform into
Werecats.
werecats
And
so
they
that
f-
they can take care of the pirates themselves.
and they can feed off the energy with the ritual of
Uh-huh.
the pirates, and then whoever, like later there's a plantation, there's all, and they feed off the energy of these people.
There's a plantation with a white man picking the peppers. I went, no.
Sorry, Scooby, that
Well,
is
I
not
mean,
correct.
there is a Caucasification to just a lot of things. Like they just sort of gloss over anything vaguely related to Africa. They're like, we're
Yeah,
not going to acknowledge Egypt. We're not going to acknowledge slavery. We're not going to
yeah.
acknowledge Black people. Lena's vaguely biracial, but not
It is it is
ethnically
unfortunate.
ambiguous.
She's ethnically ambiguous for sure. It's very unfortunate, though at the same time, I don't know if I want the version where they did address it in
No, we don't.
1998.
Yeah,
I just
that's a
feel
bit
like it
heavy.
wouldn't be good
We're just
either.
gonna point that out that they did that for convenience, and then we're gonna not ask for a reboot of this.
Yeah, do not make a live action where you explain all this. Do not
Please
let
don't.
Disney get the rights to Scooby-Doo to let them
Oh
do that
God.
reboot. So the ritual's happening, Shaggy and Scoob running around, and they end up back in the tunnel because they're being chased by Jacques, who's also a werecat. The three of them, and they knock over the voodoo dolls. And it is Velma who gets her doll first. So we get a bit of the classic Velma where she
And
like,
sh with her shoes on, she
yeah,
unties her voodoo doll, and I'm like, how? But sure.
lesbians can do anything they want,
You
you
know what? You're
know.
right. Sorry about
Sorry.
that.
Yeah, don't pick down a strong woman, okay, on this podcast. Uh, and so they get undone, and then she helps everyone else get undone. So now they can fight off the werecats because the
And
ritual has to be done at a certain time.
and the zombies are coming down through the tunnel.
And at first they're like, "Oh no, zombies!" And they're like, "Wait, no, Shaggy, they're on our side. The zombies were trying to warn us. That's why they're saying, 'Get out, beware.' They've
Yep.
been sacrificed." And they're like, "Not to you too." Some people, bad things happen, and they want it to happen to you too, like the werecats. Others, people who make our society better, are like these zombies. They're like, "We were
Yep.
sacrificed, and we're gonna warn you. We don't want that to happen to you. We're
Hmm.
against unpaid internships and workplace abuse."
That's what these zombies stand for.
Yeah. Uh, but it's on the Mark Confederate, so oof. Uh,
Yeah.
so they're chasing away, they're having a fight, and basically, like a D&D combat situation, they just have to get them to outlast the the moonlight on the dial, because when it gets too
Yep.
far, it's too late for the ritual. I think the ritual had to be done at midnight.
Hmm.
My guess would have been 3 a.m. the witching hour, but some people do say the witching hour is midnight, but it goes too late, and so they evaporate before our very eyes,
Yeah, they try to
crumbling.
get Shaggy and Scooby, but they get knocked over by the zombos. And
Yeah, they
then,
get a bit of energy zonked.
yeah,
They take some psychic damage.
yeah,
Uh
uh, yeah, and then they go poof,
Disintegrate.
and
Pretty That's a Mother Gothel death.
yeah, and then the zombies they also disintegrate, but it's not like
They're
as intense.
they're
It's
passing
more like,
on.
yeah,
Yeah, Jennifer Love Hewitt is there. She's taking
she's
them into
helping
the
them cross
light.
over.
The
Yep,
Confederate soldiers, she's like, I don't know if I'm the one to do this one, like that might be
yeah. Perhaps you
more.
should stay in
And she's
purgatory.
like, how high ranking in the army were you? What's your family? I have
He's
some
like, I was just
questions.
following orders.
Okay, maybe, you've been a zombie for this. Jennifer Love Hewitt had to determine the fate of their souls, and then the sun rises and they survive their ordeal. It's a little smarter, a little more aware of the complexities of the world. But the video camera did fall into quicksand. There was quicksand. This is the
And
90s.
that's
Quicksand was
why,
everywhere.
as a child, I was terrified of quicksand.
They lose all the evidence, and Daphne's like, what am I going to do for my show now? But it turns out Bo was an undercover cop who was trying to investigate them. And so now he's like, oh, I can report everything I saw on your show. And I'm like, next up on
And
Ancient
also,
Aliens.
hopefully, to the rest of the cops.
Yeah.
But it's like, what are they gonna do? They're the cop, like, are the cops actually gonna believe him? They'd be like, sure, Bo, okay.
Yeah. And
Like, you
then,
were supposed to be
14
on desk duty, weirdo.
4 teenagers and an undercover cop are under arrest for the disappearance of local esteemed businesswoman
Yeah,
Simone Lenoir and her
exactly.
chef.
And
the fairy
the
guy.
fairy. Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh
that's
my
so
God.
funny.
That's
That would be an interesting gritty reboot of like the mystery gang
Framed
in
for
jail.
murder.
yeah, Return to Zombie Island. Maybe that's what they're trying to clear their
Maybe.
name. And there's a bit of a flirtation ship between Bo and Velma. Um,
Because he wants to write mystery stories.
and she's
She
she'll
owns
She's
a
a
sell
book
them.
bookstore.
owner, a book, yeah, a bookstore
She's like,
owner.
maybe she's gonna be a publisher. The Dinkley label, the Mystery
There you go.
Incorporated publishing label. She becomes
Ooh,
an indie publisher. I could see that for Velma.
I
Hmm.
also love how she gets interested in him when she knows he's an undercover cop. She's like, finally, a top who can take me down.
Yeah. She's like, Fred is not doing it for me. I mean, she did date Shaggy in one of the TV shows, and it was hard because Shaggy struggled to choose between her and Scooby. Yeah,
Hmm.
because Scooby was
Yeah,
jealous, and
that
Velma
checks
was like,
out.
you know what, I deserve better. And she got a semi-canonical female love interest,
Mm.
but only semi-canonical. So, but yeah, so Daphne's like, maybe I don't want to deal with real monsters, but I kind of do want to find them. But so it's a bit of a be careful what you wish for type
Mm.
thing, you know. I guess a bit of a reparations theme.
Yeah, a little bit.
A bit of the wealthy leeching off of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Beauty doesn't always equal good.
True. Sometimes it's a honeypot.
Sometimes it's a honeypot.
Also, we get a female villain. That's a nice. I mean, there were
Yeah.
female villains in the original, but just sort of like a female mastermind that she was not to be trifled with. That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
True.
support women's rights and wrongs.
I mean,
Yep.
if you the argument could be made it's a pussy monster, so that's a whole other.
That's a book Velma writes in a few years.
The
It's a
curse,
memoir.
the curse of the pussy monster.
Oh.
Yeah. Uh, so our characters, do we root for our protagonist? And who is our protagonist? I think Daphne's our protagonist.
Daphne is a
Yeah.
protagonist.
This is Daphne's movie. She wants something more. She wants to find a real monster, and I want that for her.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
She puts up with
Yeah.
Fred's bullshit, and her and Fred kind of have a bit of a reunion at the end.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I just feel like I was rooting for Daphne. Were we all rooting for her?
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think this was
Absolutely.
definitely a smart take on the character from the original cartoon. And I think since she was the most underserved in the original, that's probably why they made it Daphne centric, which I thought was really smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The gang in general, is in a pretty good form, pretty
Hmm.
likable. We usually ask, like, do we ship any of these characters? Like, do
Yes,
we
all of
ship
them.
all of them? Like, because do we ship Fred and Daphne? So
But
until
I left
Fred,
before the orgy
I left
started.
before the orgy started. Because I kind of shipped Fred and Daphne because when at the beginning when he's like, what would make Daphne really happy if we could do this with all our friends. And I was like, wow, if he wanted to, he would. Like he was thinking of not just what she asked, but what she would really enjoy, and like caring about her and being proactive in that way. And I was like, most boyfriends cannot do that. So I was like, I know, like, I was like, honestly, good on Fred. And then he was flirting with Lena, and then I was like, Fred, because I was gonna be like, you're kind of an S tier boyfriend, and then I was like, Fred, your open relationship needs better ground rules.
Well, I think the story needed conflict, so they needed
Yeah,
to throw in something a little agita, so to speak.
and yeah, and Bo was there, so it's like all these a new combo of people to
Hmm.
ship a honeypot situation. Unaddressed sexual tension is a big part of this
I
franchise.
mean,
That's why Fred and Daphne weren't together, is because they need the honeypot.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
if they were together, we would hate Fred. We're like, oh my God, he's cheating on Daphne, you know?
yeah,
I also like, I mean, I'm personally ship Shaggy and Simone. I just
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like I think he needs a strong older woman to get his life in order, to maybe deal with his undiagnosed eating disorder and drug abuse problem, and just sort of get him a
yeah.
real job.
Yeah.
Shaggy is kind of Pete Davidson.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Big dick comic relief failing upward. Yes, very much
Yeah.
Shaggy.
Yeah. And Simone, yeah, the older wealthy woman. Yeah. Wow. We loved our antagonists too.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were fun, they were iconic. They definitely,
Sisters doing it for themselves.
yeah, registering on the country scale for sure, Mother Quake. Yeah. Uh and great vibes, gothic vibes.
The
Very
Southern Gothic.
beautiful
Yeah.
creatures. We talk a lot about Southern Gothic in that movie. We
Hmm.
Southern Gothic and voodoo has come up so much on this podcast,
Yeah. It's crazy.
and it is a rich thing to discuss. So I'm kind of like, I
Yeah.
don't get tired of talking about it because I learn something new each time we talk about it.
Yep.
And I guess that leads us to our big question. Was that your fantasy, Hannah?
Absolutely. This is my fantasy. I love this movie so much. It was one of my favorites as a kid, still one of my favorites as an adult. It's just so good. And also, I think this adventure they go on of like being ghost hunters, and it turns out there's actual, things they have to deal with, actual monsters. It seems like a fun little romp, especially because like zombies aren't there to hurt you. They're actually your friends. Yeah, I want to go on this adventure with the Mystery Inc. gang.
Christian, is this your fantasy? So it's a two-pronged question. Is it, do you like this movie? And is this an adventure you would like to go on?
Yes, I was pleasantly surprised because I was not expecting any of this. Werecats? What?
Yeah.
I know.
Who knew? But definitely a world where magic exists. I also love the vindication of Daphne.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a little disappointed about a nerfed Velma. But
Hmm.
I mean, I do think that like if I were there, I'd be like, girl, get your shit together, get some
Yeah.
LASIK, and let's fuck shit up.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I would definitely want to live in this world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Briefly, I mean not forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would definitely say this is the first, as a Scooby-Doo fan, first time watcher of this iteration. I really liked it. It was very well paced. Like I was never bored. I mean, there were a lot of sometimes I'm like, okay, there's a lot of cartoon antics, but I also realize I'm not the target audience age
Yeah.
anymore. But the cartoon antics did help keep the story moving forward. And there was enough of a character motivation and stuff to like keep me invested for like the hour 15
Hmm.
runtime. And so it was like I was like for a straight to VHS movie, like masterclass, like very well done. Like I see why it
Yeah.
was a success. And I would want to go on this adventure because yes, the zombies are friendly. It is scary, but you're there with your friends, and even when you're about to die, it's like kind of in a horny way. So like, you're tied up. It's just kind of like, you know what? Yeah, this would be a scary one for me. I'm going to Not Scary Farm in a couple of weeks, which I said I would never do again. But my friend is moving and she wants to do it before she moves. And I'm like, I'll do it for her. And I am not looking forward to it because whenever I get in one of those mazes, I'm like, I cannot wait till I am outside of this maze.
Yeah.
People scream in your face. And then you
Mhm.
jump and then they're like, hi, you screamed in my face. I'm like, yeah, because you screamed in my face. So, but yeah, I could if this seems like a little more fun than that. But also scarier. But I'd survive. So I
So
guess
yeah.
Christian, is there anything you want to plug? First off, thank you so much for coming on. This is so much
Oh, thank you
fun.
for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Well, I have a class called Stand Up for Your Power that helps people process trauma and find personal empowerment using stand-up comedy. And my special Laugh Proud is available on Tubi. It's free and it's funny, and there's a bunch of gay people in it that could double as our own gang of mystery solving queers.
So that's the next
Uh,
special. You're solving the mystery.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
on social media, I'm stand up for your power. It's the number four, not FOR. So yeah.
Yeah. And we'll put links
Awesome.
to those things in the description down below.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and thank you again for being here. It was awesome to have you on. So glad I got to share a childhood favorite with both of you.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can follow Not My Fantasy on Instagram and TikTok. We are at Not My Fantasy Pod. If you are listening on iTunes or Spotify, give us that 5-star review. Write in your little comment what you love about the podcast, or even just use some emojis, whatever. Share us with your friends and family, especially if you love this movie. Share this episode with people because, I mean, this is a great episode, a great series we're doing, and this movie is just awesome.
Yeah. And please do leave those reviews because it really does help
Yes.
the algorithm boost the show.
Yeah, so that other people can find our podcast and become listeners like you. If you are watching on YouTube, hi, hello. You can
Smash that like button.
smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the notification bell so you get notified anytime we drop another video episode. Speaking of another video episode, we will be finishing out our zombie series.
Mhm.
So we kind of did
For
talk a little
now,
bit.
we're gonna
Yes,
get
our
to
zombie
zombie.
series for now. We'll
Yeah.
definitely do it another time. but we did kind of tease it, I guess earlier today, but
Mhm.
also I think last week. We're going back to 1968 classic Night of the Living Dead. So yeah, we're starting with George Romero, like the first of his movies that we'll do on this podcast. Because we're gonna go into sort of the transition of the zombie imagery in Hollywood. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, YouTube comments. Have you
Uh,
seen this movie?
have you seen this movie? Which is your top Scooby-Doo character ship?
Ooh, that's a good one.
And has you or anyone you know been victimized by the idea of making a Scooby-Doo group costume?
Yeah. Did you
Yeah.
lose friends over it, or did
Did
you
you
guys
gain friends?
reunite?
Did you
Ooh,
reunite?
yeah.
Did
Did you
friends
gain?
become lovers?
Did you leave before or after the orgy? Please,
Yeah.
no, we're not doing that. But yeah,
See you next week. Christian, thank you so much for coming on. We'll see you soon, listeners. Enjoy your
bye,
spooky
listeners.
season.